Pass that.
Yeah, should we start with the Pledge of Allegiance? You guys can stand up. Yeah, I think we're going to stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So the first order of business is the budget workshop with the library. Welcome, library.
Thank you. Laura Lillian for you. And Rosemary, that's it. These years seem to come around quicker and quicker.
It does.
But you read what was here?
Yeah, exactly.
More, but those are something else.
Oh,
There you go.
That's a good point, too.
yeah. We have two more sections now for you to add to your budget book. So the first one will be the library. And as I did with the previous two departments, I have a little synopsis of just any of the moving parts within the budget, the library, any things. There aren't too many significant things. Find a couple. And significant would be relevant.
Yeah, in our case, it's pretty insignificant, actually. Anyway, we're basically requesting a flat budget. We are asking for increases for two lines. One, to increase our book budget, which was $55,000 for at least the last 7 years that I can look back on as president. And then it went down to 45, and the Friends were able to help cover that loss through their book sales. But it appears that they won't. Last year they opted not to do that, and now they're changing their fundraising approach, and the B is gone. So they're in a stage, like a transition stage themselves, where they're not really sure what they're going to be able to raise, so it's kind of iffy. So I requested $5,000 to be added back to the book budget, so that we would be at $50,000. And then Rosemary and I were talking, and in the last 7 years or whatever, the increase in the use of electronic reading devices has just been phenomenal. And that was something that the Friends were able to cover. But at the time, it was a very small portion. They were covering the DVDs, always the programs, and then the DVDs and the e-devices on top of it. But we looked at our statistics from 2015, and the electronic devices are well over $12,000 a year at this point, which is
The downloadable books.
the downloadable books, which is, given that we're anticipating that the Friends are not going to be able to give us more than $25,000, and that's a good year, a good amount for a year at this point. It's going to be very hard, because we're also using their money to buy the DVDs in addition, and music and some of the other things that are not e-devices. I look back through our programs for the fiscal year of 2015, and we're a very small library by Westchester standards, but we had 435 programs that year. 80% of them were children's. 77% children, 3% adults, which is a pretty phenomenal statistic, I think. We also had 9,408 people walk through our doors to come to those programs, and we had almost 4,400 children come through with their caregivers. So we really have done a lot. And that year we spent just over $15,000 on programs, which is $35 a program. So that's a lot of bang for the buck, I think. which is the strength of, being able to provide these free programs to our patrons. And so I think that we're seeing more and more children come to the library. A lot of people have been moving, kind of call it Brooklyn Extension. So I'm sure that when we look back at this year next year, we're gonna say, gee, we have a lot more people walk through our doors. So I think it's really important to be able to give them those programs and also provide the other e-devices. And the other thing that Elise Burke, who is at Westchester Library System, had mentioned to Rosemarie is, now, 10 years ago, you bought a book. Now, you buy a book. You buy a large print book. You buy Overdrive Advantage. You buy an e-version of the book. So you have to have you have to have multiple copies. And we're not buying everything, but we're talking about the bestsellers and the things that, people are clamoring to, have for their book groups or whatever. So that's just something else to, keep in the back of your mind is that, we haven't had an increase in it. We need to increase our offerings to the patrons. So.
Have you seen any change in kind of the cost to buy like a particular book, like a bestseller or anything like that?
Print books, the cost is pretty much staying the same, but the electronic books, I think when they were first offered in like 2005, 2006, publishers didn't realize how much they could charge for them and get away with it. So I was actually researching this, and I think it was 2012, the price went up 300%. And we decided, oh my goodness, we can really charge quite a bit more. And when it comes to something like a book on Overdrive, if I'm going to buy not a James Patterson bestseller, but sort of standard, a middle of the road bestseller book, the average price is $63 on Overdrive for one of those downloadable books. And it's a book that you can go into Barnes and Noble, and even if it's not discounted, it's going to be under $30. So it's one of those things where the format is expensive for us to provide. I mean, we're fortunate with the system that Westchester Library System buys some for the entire consortium to use. So what I do is I analyze every week. I analyze the holds that we have, and if there's something that there's tremendous demand, or if our patrons have been waiting a very long time for, then I will buy an additional copy on the Advantage program to be able to help out, to supplement what the system is doing. So I try to balance it with what we're getting from the consortium. But it's pricey. I mean, sometimes I just sit there and go, do I really have to pay, $109 for this audiobook, But, there's 4 holds on it. So, and the first person in the queue from Irvington is number 52 on the list. So it's like, yeah, I kind of do. Yeah. So I mean, I find myself, with these decisions. And as with the friends have been paying for this, which is great because the friends do things that pay for things that augment the library experience. But I think over especially the last 3-4 years, you can really see that electronic materials are moving from being sort of a fringe thing to being much more standard and expected by our patrons.
Do you have, related question, do you have a sense of what proportion or percentage of your customers are taking out actual books as opposed to electronic or audio books?
It's still a majority of books, of the physical books. I get statistics every month about how many electronic books and audiobooks are, and right now we're at in the mid-200s every month for items that are taken out, downloaded electronically.
And how many?
300 out of what is our normal? We circulate, I'm going to say around 7,000 items a month. So yeah, so it's still a smallish proportion, but actually, that's just the Overdrive Advantage ones. That's not counting the other Overdrive. That's not counting Total Books. That's not counting. There's a Random House platform. There are multiple platforms at WS that I don't get single reports for. So I can't be sure. It's still a small percentage, but it's a growing percentage. I mean, I think before we started the Advantage program, it was in around 120, so between 100 and 150. Now it's about 250, 270 in there every month.
What's the Advantage program? You mentioned it several times.
Okay. If you are familiar with the downloadable books we have, there's Overdrive is one of the options. Overdrive, the Westchester Library System purchases titles for Overdrive, And we are part of this program called Overdrive Advantage, where we purchase additional copies. So let's say a James Patterson book that we decide, WLS only bought, 2 copies, and we have, I can see that multiple people from Irvington are interested in this title. I can purchase an additional copy that goes to Irvington people only. So it may help them jump the line, and it also helps make sure that they fill the hole sooner.
Who doesn't like to jump the line?
I was wondering how I moved up so.
But all those are people who are attending the program, so these mostly residents, exclusively residents?
Mostly.
We don't keep that statistic, but we do, but they seem to be mostly people just from hearing, certainly we find out when Irvington schools are closed or when there's something happening, a half day, seeing the change, we see a lot of those familiar faces, so it seems to be mostly local.
And are you doing much programming for seniors and mostly for children?
The majority of our programs are for children because they're the best attended. These programs for the lectures and the plays that we do offer for adults, we try to offer what we can. We certainly, the evenings and weekends, we have quite a robust schedule. Targeting seniors specifically is very difficult. Historically, we haven't had great attendance when we do that because chances are anything we offer, the senior center already offers and does quite well. So,
We have a senior book club though.
we do have we had a senior book club, but it actually sort of faded away.
I was just about to jump.
No, it's this is bad. But, so I mean, it's certainly, we tend to see a variety of programs that older people can come to, but they're not targeted specifically for seniors.
Do you have the, I only get to page 9.
9 of 10, and then there's the next one. It looks like this.
The balance sheet, yeah.
I'll
I just don't see the bottom line.
Okay,
total
sure.
increase. I'm trying to skip to the end and
I
then.
don't know where that is.
My last one is
Just as a
9
library, I
of
have to read the whole thing, right? You can skip to the end.
Too. Okay, let me get it.
Which one are you?
I think that's on all of them.
10 to 9, yeah.
Let me get another one. I
This
just
is
wanna-
not 10? This is just.
No, there's one more page of which is the bottom one. I just want to point out
That's what
to,
the increase was.
let me get back to the, 1 second here. Back to the front cover, the front page. I have those T accounts. T91, take out the 4, it's 15,000.
I'm sorry, were you?
On the front page.
Not 415.
Oh,
yeah.
That's
what I was asking.
That's the shift forward for dollars.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's just out of order.
It's just out of order, okay.
They don't have
It's
that.
not 415?
No, no.
It's just 15.
This is now 10.
Hang on, Brenda. You think we might have,
Go to
some
the
of this
last,
here?
go to the last page, which is the balance sheet, and then work backwards.
Oh,
There, the page right before the last is page 9 of 10.
Yep.
And the
It
one
is 10 of
before
10.
that is 10 of 10.
Oh, it's just 10 of 10.
Just a,
Okay.
perfect, never mind.
Thanks, Larry.
Although, so I don't think the other grand totals were.
Nothing like this.
Right.
It says the grand total, it's up 100%.
No. It's up 23,000 in total, 23,826. And where you see that is in, the bottom line of the recommended and the requested stage, because it's showing last year's revenues and this year's expenses, so it nets out to a $23,000 difference from last year.
sorry, I'm just, what happened, I lost page.
Like page 9
Right.
by mistake.
No, I mean,
You just lost it.
I lost it.
Can't go too far.
I didn't pull it out because there was also a summary sheet, so I just discounted. Okay.
If someone wanted to make a contribution to the library that, and they weren't hooked into the Friends per se, let's say somebody walked into Village Hall, or how would they be directed, or what could happen? Would they just say, would someone here, or if someone approached you guys, they would say,
Well,
just contact the Friends and make a contribution to
Well,
them, or?
No, we do have people that walk in and
Say.
just give us
Yeah.
contributions. We have an adorable set of girls that every year for their birthday bring half of their birthday money is given to the library. And so what, about $100 or so.
Yeah, between $1,600.
Yeah, so they bring it, and then they hand it to Carolyn, our children's librarian, and then she has them help her pick out books and then puts book slates in. So we do have people that just come in and just give us donations. Anything,
Brenda tries to take it for social security payments, but.
anything that is under $1,500 is, even if, somebody brings it in, Rosemary puts it into the T101 account. And then the donations of $1,500 and above go into the trustee account, which is T92, and that would require the authorization of the board to use it. What we are using T92 for at this point in time is we're using it to pay for the new website that we've had designed, and also for staff training and educational purposes. So we really want them to be able to, go and experience, we have some people that are training to be higher levels, and there's going to be, isn't there a children's librarian conference in Chicago?
Well, there's ALA in Chicago that Pam would like to go
Okay.
to, and then there's another one that Carolyn's going to, which I think is closer, it's Hudson Valley. No, it's
So,
that's great, that's a lovely story about it. But I'm thinking it's the kind of thing that sometimes people, they think, I want to give something, but I don't know what libraries are things that do grab the attention of people, in terms of, doing good and being a positive influence. I'm just wondering if there was a way to
Gift opportunities.
Yeah.
Instead of
Like
buying a copy of the latest bestseller for her birthday, I'll give her a copy in her honor to the
Right.
library.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
figure out.
There are programs like that we probably should be looking into that people could do.
I think you might end up, I'm thinking of, the Friends have done so much for so long, and, that's great. And just one more way that might garner some contributions that people feel good about. It's not like a brick, but it's like a brick. It's a brick.
And your neighbors will borrow this book with you.
Right. So that's something like that, I think. And it's, it reminds me of something else that about getting the word out about library things. Now, I know on our website, if you sign up for library notices, you get library notices. But I think some people are missing things that they should know about, because they're just not hooked into the right email or, for instance, the classical concerts that are 4 times a year, they are 5 times a year.
We changed it.
Okay, see, I didn't know. I should know. But
Well, they're so popular.
it is something that more people could get something out of kids who were taking music lessons. If they saw those professionals performing up close, let's say they only stayed for half of it and then they went home. I'm just not sure we're getting the word out to everybody about some of the good things.
Well, we do have the new constant contact.
If you sign
Email.
up.
If you come into the library and there's a sign-up sheet, and then at the very beginning of each month, Rosemary sends out, an email that specifically outlines all the children's programs, whatever concerts we're gonna have, what the book clubs are reading, and how to register. So, that's great. And
And we advertise in the Hudson Independent and in Riverside Enterprise and on the Art Westchester website. And we do try to do, but again, there's.
And we do have our little screen now behind.
Yes,
that's
great.
which, that's very.
Well,
not just
you may be doing all that's reasonably possible, but if one of you or, among your smart people, here's another way to get the word out to people in the village who are missing it.
Well, we've had
Link
very
into the-
positive,
Yeah.
press from the Enterprise too, about our Homeric reading group.
Right.
And the dance.
The salsa
The
dance
salsa
program
dancing
we had, and
that we had. So, and the Homeric reading group, gave a donation at the end of the year, which was also very nice. Are these the same people?
Homeric Reading Group and the salsa dance.
I don't think so.
I don't think there's any overlap at all. The Venn diagram is very distinct.
Well, I think the programs are great, so. Everybody should do that.
So your You're asking for 10,000 more for electronic books and 5,000 more for books. And in addition to that, you're hoping to be funded by the Friends for additional funds for those things.
The Friends programming is directed towards, funding is directed towards the programs, and also, we left DVDs and, like the music off of that, so they do that. In addition, they are, I don't know if you've seen, they're doing a beautiful garden in the courtyard in memory of Pam Strong. So, they're hoping to have, they started it in the fall, and they're hoping to have, an event to honor her in June, May or June.
We went over a goal on that fundraiser, right?
Yeah,
They did.
yeah.
And also, I'm just thinking that we would still be using Friends for the books on, the physical books on CD. So we still have the audiobooks, but the ones that are not the downloadable ones, the other time we
The
still.
playways.
The playaways and the books on CD. So, I mean, it's really just, it's only taking one segment of, but it's, especially with the electronic books being such a large portion of the, spending, it seems to be the one to pull out.
And also, we'd like to be able to track it as a separate budget line, just to see, because it is something that is new within the last 10 years, and.
Is it a separate budget line now?
No, Brendan put it as 60, but I would probably ask
Yeah, have some way to
to differentiate.
I would love to see the differentiation in electronic media. My concern is just how do you track to know when you're starting to, maybe you answered already, so overbuy obsolete formats. Or
Right.
not even, well, overbuy, if it's obsolete, any purchase might become an overbuy. So how do you, you're tracking usage not just by title, but by
Like
delivery?
Lauren, absolutely. That's part of our monthly statistics that break down. I get a statistic for all the playaways, adult and, adult, YA and juvenile. And I mean, I pull them into larger statistics for the board, but I see the playaways, I see the books on CD, I see the CDs, I see the DVDs. They're all separate lines of statistics that I get for circulating.
Books on CD, is that different than an audiobook?
It's the audiobook that comes in CD format, yes.
And people get that?
People do get that. One of the things that people often do is, either they put the CDs in their car and listen to them that way, or sometimes people take them home, put them on their computer, and download them onto their phone or their computer that way, and do that as well. It's another option. But they have to figure out to come in the CD format. As opposed to the playaways, which are MP3 books that come on in small, they're about the size of just a chewing gum. I don't know if you've ever seen them. They're the MP3 players that have one book on there with a fast forward, forward, review, play, and stop button, pause button, and basically that's it. For any, that's an extremely popular format, actually. But no, I am absolutely monitoring the circulation of those things on a monthly basis.
Yes, and because it seems like if it's growing at any rate, and the cost is much higher than books, then obviously the rate of expense is going to go up very quickly. The other thing is, are there options about beyond overdrive? I mean, what are in terms of getting copies that can be, the computation allows for loaning out to multiple users for the same title?
There are multiple formats that are supported through WLS, and also that we could do on our own. I like using the ones that the Westchester Library System offers, because they do a lot of the vetting for deciding which vendors have a better deal. They are actually looking, the problem with Overdrive that everybody really has an issue with is that all of the books are one copy, one use. So if I buy a copy, if you put a hold on it and she's listening to it, you have to wait. There are other formats now where they'll just say, the Hoopla, for example, which they're having problems launching, but they're hoping by March 2nd it'll be out there. You'll have an option for $5 a month, and it's simultaneous use. If you all want to read the same book, you can just all log on and download it and listen to it, watch it, read it, at the same time.
Up to 5.
Up to five downloads per month.
So. Yeah, okay, I mean, it just seems, again, it's the cost of things, so the option, like if I was to go to, I don't know what. As an individual, the books are much cheaper.
They
So
are.
it's the, is it just the multi-use license that
That seems, that seems to be what it is. Actually, Laura and I were discussing this. I do know several libraries, and what they have done is they have bought a Kindle and they download the much less expensive versions of things on the Kindle, and patrons can borrow that Kindle. Problem with that is that it's not going on my Kindle. I'm borrowing the library Kindle. Now I'm responsible for a piece of electronics that's not my own. And, I might not feel comfortable with that. So I would actually much rather download it from and have it on my device. I can see where people feel that way. So-
it's paperweight, that's operating, and it's now very cheap. I mean, the problem is for the library, then you have more hardware to maintain.
Exactly.
But
So-
the audio sticks already on that.
Yeah. Part of the thing too is, if we were to say that I could buy a copy for, $25 of an electronic book that I download out of the Kindle of a bestseller, or $20, let's say 25. If I want to circulate 4 of them, that's $100, and I can get a copy from Overdrive for, $90. And so maybe at that point then, I don't know if I'm really saving money.
I'm surprised Amazon hasn't come in and
Yeah.
disrupted this like they've done it.
Stay tuned. There might be a big announcement tomorrow, who knows?
Well, very good. I think it's pretty clear, the increases. It's about 3.7%, I think, total. And a chunk of it is medical insurance. Thank you, New York State.
That's it. Right.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
What'd you say, Joe? Sorry.
By my math, it was, like the 23,826 out of 643 would be 37%, 3.7% increase. But thanks again, very clear. Appreciate the update as always.
What about
It's always nice to be here and not have to, talk about fires.
Oh, no fires.
Floods.
Floods.
Yeah.
No fires and no
There are
floods.
floods from fires.
Hardwood.
We've had a few minor leaks, but it has not been anything insurmountable yet.
Mr. Greg Nielsen, DPW. They've always, everything we've saved on salt this year, right? Not coming.
Until it's over.
You're not going home tonight?
Yes, that is for you.
All right. So, what's the story this week?
Okay, so the, Brenda again has a summary on the top for us here.
Yes, the biggest change for Greg next year is a personnel change.
Yes,
Manpower.
3 long-time employees are retired.
Oh, my.
Are you all related to it?
Well, 2 of them are. We're in the process of looking for qualified drivers right now.
Are these replacements going to be saving salary? Because they're coming in at a lower grade?
Yes. And they come in under a step program.
And that's reflected in this budget?
I don't think it's reflected.
It's not reflected yet, and actually the savings aren't tremendous because you're adding a health insurance plan. The outgoing employees retain
Yeah.
health insurance, yeah, so, it's probably closer to a wash.
Okay.
Sorry, I mean, is it, douse that? Douse that thought.
You did a good job.
Gloom and doom.
Mostly our budget is flat. There's a couple of increases, and there's a couple of decreases, so.
I guess it's, when you're looking at the budget, what you're really contrasting is the original budget for 2016, that's on the left side, and the 2017 recommended stage. When we did the requested, since we did the requested one, there've been a few changes, so those current changes are in the recommended column. We didn't want to go back and change the requested, because since you had already seen that one. So, I think it's on the first one. That's a large one here. But I put everything in the collator tonight with a staple, and it's not coming out exactly the way I put it in. I don't know.
So the very cover sheet, the one called Budget Workshop, I'm looking at that to get a handle on it. That just has,
And then
communications.
in Greg's budget, well, he doesn't really have control over the communication, that's part of, because it's buildings, so it kind of gets lumped into his budget, but it's not direct, the DPW cost. So it's maintenance of the buildings, such as the cleaning, janitorial services, building maintenance.
And why has Cablevision gone up? That's not the same as the WAN. WAN is there's a $3,000 increase. I'm talking about broken out.
That one is 7,000. We didn't have the WAN last year. That's a new charge that Westchester County's imposed.
And what about the Cablevision that's going?
That's, Cablevision is actually our.
LightPath?
LightPath is our phone service, and it was rolled out, last year was rolled out to part of the village, leading Village Hall. This year was rolled out to the rest, so it's a shifting of some of the costs, but it didn't shift as much as we would have liked. But it's being rolled into Cablevision, that's why that number's up.
So I'm sorry, so this is just DPW's portion?
No, this is an entire village-wide, it's like a central repository for all of the communications needs in the village.
What do you type? Recreation, library, DPW, water?
We don't break it out by department.
But it's in this budget?
Yes.
Yes.
But this is a percentage, the 29 is their percentage?
No.
Phones are used for something else.
Right.
It's handled similar.
Everybody has cell phones now.
If you had control.
We handle it similar to our central garage, where the central garage works on all vehicles of all departments, and we don't break out necessarily the costs of their working in each individual department, so this is handled in a similar way.
Okay.
That's all. And
This is the place for parking it?
it's being parked,
Okay.
for
Gotcha.
lack of a better
It
word.
makes sense.
That's it, yeah.
It just doesn't be washing off like.
Yeah. Greg has a big screen in his office.
Pretty flat to me.
Am I missing page one? Is that
Yeah, that's what I'm
what
looking
we're
for.
commenting
Let me go upstairs and see. That one, the only increase there was the compliance consultant. First page is actually the engineer's line, or Greg's line.
Right. The Department of Health has changed the regulations for mobile petroleum storage. They're pretty complicated. And we have this consultant that we've been working with for a few years now. But because of the new regulations and the new responsibilities that the consultant has, then we raise the fees. So that's what that is.
So whatever happened, this is for both of you guys, I guess. Whatever happened to bulk pickup fees?
It was never implemented.
I understand.
We couldn't,
I was thinking,
If you think
was
about it,
a
you could-
source of revenue or offset to
No.
cost?
no, yeah, we couldn't come up with a workable system to implement the collection of the fee and have it integrate correctly into the Public Works Department without really changing the entire way they do certain things. It's a long story, and I'm happy to go through it, not necessarily tonight, I don't have my notes in front of me, but the bottom line is, we worked a long time trying to go through a variety of scenarios. It sounds easy to just bill for people to put large items out by the curb and collect that, but in terms of the way his system currently runs, we couldn't come up with an alternate system that would actually work. It was essentially more trouble than it was worth for the relatively small amount of money that it was going to generate. I do understand that there's a disincentive, or I should say an incentive for people not to throw out as much by implementing the fee. But again, all of that, the offset of that and changing his system, we couldn't come up with a way of doing it efficiently.
Okay, I'm gonna just throw out something here and correct, because I know when I need to get electronics pickup, I call and set it up for that next Thursday. So wouldn't this be the same kind of reservation-based system, or how does it?
I'm happy to go through and add all of my notes in a folder, all the different scenarios that we went through and what the impacts of them were. I mean, you know, I'm not trying to, but I think it would be more productive if we worked together.
Yeah, that's fine. I just was thinking, ways to try to increase some kind of revenue, but I guess it was supposed to just be labor offset, wasn't it?
No, not so much. I mean, we weren't looking for labor
Substitute something or just? No,
We want to add.
it's page one of the printout, so it's after the summary page, if it was. Or two of those.
Okay. So where are we, just looking at this thing so we can see, where are we at the savings from the streetlights? Where's that line? I just,
Page,
let's see, heating oil, I see NIPA, is that it?
no, it's page 9 and 13.
Okay, thanks. Let me check with that. Are we do we have more in the budget this year, or less in the, we're at 45?
No, we're flat, but we already took the savings on that.
And that our actual bills are in line with that?
Yeah, they are. We are looking at a rate increase through NIPA, which I think we have factored in here, but they are in line.
So we've spent 29,000 year-to-date right now
Yeah.
for electricity, and I guess
It's a seasonal.
Season,
It's
exactly.
seasonal, so you can't just do a straight line on it. But the comparison, the very quick comparison is, we do project 45,000 as our budget. And if you go back to the left, almost the leftmost column, 2014 actual. 80,000.
Yeah.
So that's your number.
Looks like savings
And
to me.
our right above it, the street light bulbs, parts and bulbs, where is that at in terms of, are they holding up? I guess that's what, I don't know how to read this number versus
We have no
the previous.
purchases. We have no purchases of streetlight replacements, so anything that is not currently working is either under warranty or is a problem with the electricity, not the bulb. So we're working through, I mean, there are isolated incidents that we're still working through.
I'm just trying to get at, there really is.
No, I understand we kept the budget in there because eventually we are gonna have a supply, we're not gonna have we are gonna have a supply in-house. And so there may be some costs that we have, but
We can't see life cycle costs in this right now. This is just a budget order. That's all I'm getting at, kind of.
Yep.
And it looks like the basic maintenance is still going to be the same.
No, I think we have to work on that. That's a negotiation. I think, it stands to reason that
There should be less bulbs to replace.
there's less work being done.
Monthly charge. It's not a huge number anyway, but it's.
Yeah, but to the extent that we can nail that down a little further, we'll make a change on that. But right now, it's a placeholder, as you said. But I think we knew this all along, that number has the potential of going down.
Yeah, and I know we're waiting because we still did have some repairs.
Yeah, there still are power problems, which are our responsibilities in some cases.
Yeah, but I mean, what the bottom line is that, it's basically 41 basis points, not even 0.5% more.
Yeah.
Which is nice. Yeah, So,
Let's talk a little bit about the one on.
Where is that at?
It's not,
That may not-
Capital costs, no?
yeah, but it's just an overall discussion.
It's the one on Bandit, which we brought up before, put together a report on how we pick up the garbage now and how we will pick it up with the one on Bandit that we're recommending. Its upfront cost is quite steep, but I think the savings over time more than make up for it. So we're hoping to get this proposed, this capital budget. So we feel we can do more than half the village with the one-arm band.
And but this, none of this has been presented to you, as Greg said, there'll be, some summary report that you can consider, which will be in the context of the capital budget as well. But I think the idea is to become more efficient with how we use our workforce, and which, as you know, is considerably smaller than what it was, 8 years ago. And so, the idea is to be able to get more work done rather than riding on the side of a truck, to do different type of work, and be more efficient.
including maintenance, things like that, which are obviously important.
Exactly.
We also feel that once we actually get the truck here, that we'll be able to add more stops than we've already figured out we can do by experience, so.
And now, in the part of the process, you have to have new trash cans. We're getting ready. Is that part of what's
Yes,
projected as
well,
initial costs?
Our recommendation is gonna be to get the 95-gallon cans, and to also do the commingled recycling with the truck. We have the truck, you might as well use it. So that would require 2 trash cans for each property
Address.
or address, house, whatever. It wouldn't change the way we do our multifamilies with dumpsters, that wouldn't change. Main Street wouldn't change, Main Street area. There's no way we could do the one-arm bandit around there. That's just, it's not practical.
How big are the trash cans that each home's gonna get for recycling?
I'm sorry?
How big are these trash cans that are gonna replace the old recycling?
That's something we need to talk about. These cans come in 2 sizes, basically, 95-gallon, 65-gallon. I think they actually make a 35-gallon too, but I'm not so sure that that's feasible. We're hoping that down the line, that Westchester County will go to single stream. I don't know if they have any plans to do that, but it would certainly make our life a lot easier if they did. Sooner or later, we're gonna have to go the way the other villages do, paper and cardboard 1 week, and then bottles and cans the next week. That's the way most places do it. I think it's just us in Hastings that do everything in 1 week, and it's getting pretty taxing. Although the one-arm bandit will take some of the pressure off of that, so. The cans are the same price, whether they're 65-gallon or 95-gallon, so.
Interesting. Because you just have to make sure that they are manageable by an average homeowner.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
95 gallons store a lot of wet weight if you've got, vegetables and
Well,
garbage.
They're on wheels.
they're on wheels, they roll.
Wow, there's people
Space
with
in your
driveways that go up and down.
Wheels.
Right.
That's why I have.
If-
They have a driveway that goes up and down, and 2 containers that size. It's, in the inner village, you wouldn't be able to do it because the homes are generally smaller, less storage space and whatnot. But the outer areas, you probably would have a better opportunity to do it. So we'll have to look at it. It's not,
Right,
we haven't made any decisions, certainly. I mean, you haven't even heard the preview tonight, yeah. So, but that's a little preview of what's to come.
Future budgets.
But as far as tonight,
It's basically an unchanged budget year over year. And where are yard waste costs here? I haven't seen that. Have you seen any trend in that?
Yes,
Over the last 6
it's
years?
worse instead of better.
That's what I wanted to
The
know.
first year,
Yeah.
when we stopped picking up the piles,
Yeah.
kind of bags, I was shocked at the low amount of leaves that we picked up. But as each year goes by, we get more and more in bags. So the dumping costs, as you say, are,
Well, labor costs too, right? So, where is that? I'm sorry. Organic
Page
fees.
10?
that would be under organics.
But you're keeping them flat this year.
It's the
Yes,
same budget as last year, 30,000.
yeah, we're keeping it flat, right.
Greg, is this because fewer people
You
are?
gotta remember, that's not just the leaves, that's all the yard waste in the village, and what weighs the most are the trees. Yeah, last storm, we had 3 trees come down, so
Yeah.
that increases the dumping costs.
Let's put them in the river, no?
Yeah, right.
Send them to Dobbs Ferry.
Float them on down.
Build a house.
No, sorry.
That's okay. What was my question? Is the increased number of bags of leaves because people aren't mulching as much as they used to?
Well, I don't know what the reason was. My guess in the first year was, they were weighing the cost between having a landscaper take them away,
okay.
mulching, things like that. And I think, they couldn't give them to us, so, the cost of a landscaper putting 50 bags, 100 bags of leaves together, they were just taking them away. But now we're seeing a large amount of bags and bigger properties, so.
So we still have a problem that we probably need to do better educational outreach on options to deal with the leaves.
Well, yeah, this year, when we sent out the sanitation schedule, the options are on the back of the sanitation schedule, and we put it on the back of the letter as well, about the mulching and what the options were, so.
You might want
It's like when recycling started in the late 80s or mid 80s, there wasn't much recycling, and now, it's just, takes time for it to
Work itself out routine, yeah.
I guess one thing I was gonna say is I think that, this year we have a lot less publicity, a lot fewer signs. I don't even know if we ran the video on it, or made any mention of that short PSA and so forth and so on. So I think there's a lot less visibility to, it's almost like you need, every fall season, you need to bring visibility up. Not you, but the village needs to. So it's something to think about.
Well, this year, as the years went on, and then we get to this year, there was virtually no piles out there. The only
So they got
piles that
that
were out
message.
there, a landscaper might put a pile out on Tuesday, come back on Thursday and get it, but the first year, they were leaving piles all over the place. We had to, let them know that we weren't picking them up, but.
Oh, I remember those little flags.
Right, exactly.
So that's not happening much.
So
There
there's
are
been-
No, there's hardly any pile. Like I said, if there is a pile, the landscaper comes back and gets it, so.
So that education,
That works, but that's not,
that's
where
not
the-
whole
that's
thing.
where the hammer.
the problem is to try to reduce the number of bags.
Yes,
The next
right.
problem. One thing I was gonna point out was maybe, and this is something that, Larry, we could talk about later as we get closer in to the summertime, maybe it's worth trying to do some sort of a mailing to people again, like, it just reminds them of the option. I know that New Rochelle has created some pretty simple and catchy graphic that we could do a variation of that sort of just gives it to you very simply. It's like, not really text oriented, it's more for the the post-reading generation. That makes the point.
Post-reading. We just have the library here, now we go.
Well, yeah. So
It's audio.
it's audio books.
It's audio.
in the library.
Graphic novels, graphic novels and audio books.
It's not pornographic, but it's for the Twitter generation. Keep everything short and sweet. So maybe I'll circulate that around to you guys. If you remember to do it, you can take a look.
And what's the ideal time for a message to go out? I mean,
August. Well, there's a problem is if you wait
These are
till when
late.
you think you
Yeah.
need them, which is September or August or September, people have already signed their landscaping contracts back in April, March or April. So you almost, if you could afford it, you would do it twice, maybe once at the beginning of the year to remind people.
when you hire your landscaper, ask for this.
Right. Here are your options, and then, maybe something to remind them at the end, more toward actual leaf season. That's 2 mailings.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we should at least get it out of the first.
Yeah, the graphics on the.
And maybe from the desk of the mayor.
The graphic message.
Bully pulpit.
You could have an audio message with a little video.
The new tree plantings.
Okay, exactly. All right, yes.
Yes, we did increase that budget, and the reason for that is, as you can see, the trees on Main Street are in pretty sad shape, as are the tree wells. I guess, what was the name of that company with the streetscape?
Saratoga. Yeah.
Saratoga has recommended that a tree well, now, this wouldn't be what you actually see, but the tree well would be 10 feet by 5 feet by 4 feet deep with a special
Soil.
subsoil. I
Yeah.
forget what it's
Structural
called.
soil.
Structured
Yeah,
soil.
right.
That we could do ourselves. It's a mix of topsoil, gravel, and mulch. But you're talking about excavating
It's big tree
a
well.
very large thing, now planting the tree, and then it has to be all put back. And they're also recommending, which we're starting to look into now, permeable pavers. So this is an expensive operation, but
This is planned for this
hopefully
year.
the trees will actually grow.
The idea would be to try, hopefully, talking to the tree commission, idea maybe to focus on one block as a test block, right? To enhance the tree
We
wells.
want to come up with a standard way of handling it, and then
Yeah.
just proceed through regularly, up and down Main Street. Well, it's not gonna happen all in 1 year unless you decide to
No,
open up
that's-
the coffers, but at least the ones that we do replace will be replaced correctly and not haphazardly.
The other thing that was discussed was, for lack of a better term, disposable trees, which plant a tree that only lasts 10, 15, 20 years, take it out, do it again.
Before it's up into the wires and needs to be pruned awkwardly and all that.
So that's on the table for discussion.
Well, because if you go toward the trees that people like the most, or tend to be these disposal trees, just in terms of short-lived, cherries and pears. Everyone likes the flower, but the lifespan of, if you get 25 to 30 years out of one of those trees, you're lucky, right? So a lot of people who are using it in like public spaces, just sort of have essentially they're planning for a 15, 20-year period, and they have to build in the budgets to do replacements. So they're not considered to be trees that are going to last 75 years, 100 years, with great canopies and all that kind of stuff. But they're feel-good trees.
And they grow good.
But it's definitely worth
And everybody.
spend some time talking also to Michael Bradley, because he's got a lot of connections into New York City about tree wells and stuff like that.
And Lucille Mons is also offered up some suggestions as well, so.
Well, I think it's a great effort. I'm sure one of these avenues will be a great improvement. And I know we did get a letter from, I think it was Kenny Zarelli, about the routes and the danger of those sidewalks. So, we're trying to be more of a walkable community. So I think if the sidewalks are in great shape without those big humps, and there are trees that have some shade and a sense of ambience, that's a lot of the goal that we've set for years, so I'm all in favor of it.
Like Larry said, we want to set a standard and then go forward.
Okay.
Very good.
Fine with this.
Thank you for the flat budget, we appreciate it.
That's
Okay.
thank you.
You
Thank
too.
you very much.
Should I, Next up is update on traffic safety matters in your police department.
Brenda, are we giving you these back to us?
Why don't you leave a link for the back? Do that now.
Oh, yes.
So the cover the name.
Yeah. I'll put those in the book, but these we had already, so. Didn't bite you. But
I might, I just brought back a whole box of old binders, and make some smaller. There's actually some budget books. Because you always get the pending and then the final. Kira said you gotta get these things out of the house. Box back.
Shredded mulch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You've been doing it in this box and throwing it in the fireplace.
Some of that I do it, but then it's, yeah.
It was, that was a great plan, but.
So, waiting for the chief, I was gonna mention to you, we were talking about the electric trucks and stuff. Taking that number, I haven't looked it up yet for this, for my quiz, but assuming it's like half that, so it's $1 a day to charge it, or whatever dollar a charge, it actually breaks about even to the cost of a gallon of gasoline, right? So you're not really saving money that way. You know, it's not necessarily fuel savings, but you're doing other kinds of, that's just from the car point of view, maybe the truck is different, but I imagine it's going to be great. Sorry. Well, good evening. Mayor, trustees. That's Sergeant Hoffman, and he's going to give a short presentation at the end of my, okay?
It's nice that he's also a mic, it makes it easier. And another Mike Morano is home sick.
Yes, he's got,
And
well,
he's
fortunately, he
working
would have
on
been here
this
tonight too.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Hi.
Okay.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm no good at PowerPoints.
Well, we're just talking about reading, so about the library here.
And visuals, too.
And visuals.
What for you?
Visuals.
Thank you. Okay, briefly, as we continue.
Yeah, so, I met with you and the lieutenant and Larry, I said about 3 weeks ago, a month ago, something like that. We kind of asked, we've obviously had a couple meetings, several members of the traffic committee, the chair is fixing his hair, coming in now.
Walter is here.
So, well, just talking about you. They've come up with a lot of suggestions. I know they've met with you as well. And we just kind of, I said, I thought it would be a good idea to have you come in, update the board about, kind of where we are, where we've been, where we're going. And I just thought this would be a good opportunity to do that.
Sounds like a plan.
Great.
As we continue to be proactive with the traffic safety throughout the village, many of the faded or substandard traffic signs have been replaced, and we're still moving forward with that project. Also added were crosswalks at Main Street and all aqueduct crossings, Broadway, side streets, and again, to add more safety for pedestrian traffic. Additionally, added roadway markings like slow or stop ahead in Sycamore Lane, Station Road, and again, down to Bridge Street and towards the southbound traffic platform there. A stop sign was added, and also with a yield stop also for vehicles that would be entering into Bridge Street area, West Main Street area. Additional stop signs and speed limit signs were added on Hammond Road
at all aqueduct crossings also. Additionally, Parker Lane, Meadowbrook Road, and West Sunnyside Lane were added this year. Speed limit reductions, significant effort on Broadway and of course at the school zones has been continued. Some of the most recent initiatives have been crosswalk training of the students in the schools, traffic safety stops, including commercial and vehicle checkpoints at Broadways. Sometimes you'll see a car at the middle of the intersection of Broadway that's doing a limited, what we call limited stop versus full-blown commercial stops that we've done in the past. And we continue to do on a schedule 2 of those a year. And have been very proactive and productive.
Those are the big ones you're talking about,
right.
the commercial ones, yeah,
Commercial.
multiple agency.
Issuance of drivers, we also started an initiative with the issuance of driver warning letters. And that situation arises when a village resident or anybody driving a vehicle or pedestrian sees a vehicle operating erratically, speeding, or blowing a stop sign. If they can initiate the plate and report it to us, we will follow up and make a contact to the owner of the registered vehicle, issuing that warning letter. Issued about maybe 25 of those. Most of them were dealing with the field point issue up there with the parking and the pickup and the drop off up there. But I haven't had anybody come and say, no, it's not me. So apparently the warning system does work to a certain degree, and I haven't really noticed any repeats. So it has been somewhat effective. We've also...
That's not an enforcement issue, that's more of an educational thing.
Right. We've also developed the ghost car, placing that periodically throughout the village at different points, not the same location each day. That has had an effect, but again, it's going to have a limited effect, because people are obviously going to realize that the vehicle is empty.
It works the first day.
Right.
Although sometimes it's not a ghost car.
Right now, with the enforcement of the additional personnel, there's going to be somebody there, but you figure out whether it's in there or not. You want to take the chance, be my
Not
guest.
gonna let us know.
He doesn't know when it's on until he comes to it.
Yeah, that's correct. The speed data signs have been very effective, I want to add. Larry has done a lot of work with them, posting them out there and collecting data from various street locations. And some of the areas that he has had the signs on Main Street, Sarasville Road, East Sunnyside Lane, Field Point Drive, Harriman Road, Hudson Road East, and Station Road, Sycamore Lane, and West Clinton. I have to say that they're valuable tools for us because it saves us time and effort. We can get to those locations that we are having problems at and have the officer there at the high or pinnacle point of traffic flow when the violators are mostly there versus having a guy sit there all day long waiting for something to happen. So they're very effective in that way, and then using manpower, and again, the signs do work. And again, having them posted there is a reminder to the public also to obey the speed limits. So since we've, the last study we did, the most recent one, which comes to mind, was the one on Cyrusville Road. And I had a conversation with Larry back in January, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we had an officer sign in that area on Cyrusville Road between the ranges, the entrance to the rear of the reservoir and Field Point Drive entrance also. We issued 17 speeding violations in that period between January 5th to date, and the weather hasn't been cooperative, so. But I expect us to do more of that enforcement down the road.
But then again, the data collection allows you to pinpoint the time that you can send someone there. So they weren't there again all day.
No,
Same as the
this
peak
was,
time.
I'd say from, we had them there from about 10 a.m. to almost 2 o'clock in the evening, 4-hour range. And again, he wasn't constantly there the whole time, but again, he focused on that time frame, which was good. Again, we had other calls attended to, which would pull him off the detail from time to time. Future collection locations, again, we're going to revisit the ones that we've done in the past, the ones that have already been done, and reevaluate them. Obviously, we're going to add some new ones, Stuart Ardsley Avenue West, Riverview Road, South Answer Street, South Buckhead Street. And again, I'd like to do more studies with regard to North Broadway and South Broadway to see what kind of calming effect we're having down there, because we do a lot of enforcement down there because of the speed. And with the college and that's down there, and what we used to have the Catholic school that was there, and we used to get a lot of traffic flow with that through Langton Avenue and again Hudson Road East. So a lot of that's it is coming to a fruition with regard to using the traffic data. Going forward, we will be deploying to problem locations, again, using the data from the speed traffic data machines. And again, gather data, accident patterns. And also use of resident complaints. Some of the issues that I've dealt with the residents calling me directly, we've looked into, and that's included boxing off the 120 driveway, where DOT was contacted. They were able to put that box that you see at the
120 North Broadway,
yeah, North Broadway 120, and again at the St. Barnabas and ICS crossing. There's one that was installed there also. We're also discussed with DOT. They're going to be putting another box outline by Sycamore Lane. In addition to working with, again, residents complaining to me, we notified DOT, and they put a left turn only going southbound to enter Harriman Road, which kept the traffic flowing a lot more easier because people would now just line up instead of being in both lanes, which would create hazard and accidents from time to time.
So again, left turn only.
To go into Harriman Road. In other words, heading southbound,
Down and-
you'll see where the arrows are in the roadway?
Yeah, right. Got it.
In addition, examples of enforcement, it's going forward, again, the speeding, more stop sign violations being enforced. We're planning on also doing, extending it into no trucking violations, passing stop school buses, all of the vehicle and traffic issues that we see throughout the village, obviously, are going to be come to fruition with the advantage of having this additional officer doing this type of enforcement. Again, working towards failure to deal with pedestrians when we can make those stops and enforcements. We'll be doing that also.
How do you plan to do that on Main Street? 'Cause
Main
that's-
Street is a very it's an issue unto itself because there's safety issues involved. It's a safety issues involved with the officers, the people that you're
Certainly
stopping.
for pedestrians, there's safety issues. 'Cause
I understand that.
I can't tell you how many times I've almost been hit coming to meetings at night, walking across this walk right outside the police headquarters. So, and that's not just me, it happens all the
Oh, yeah,
time.
I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's a safety factor for the officer, it's a safety factor for the violator, and it's also a safety
It's a
factor.
safety factor. For first time someone gets hit and killed in a sidewalk, there's going to be a major problem in this village. So I want to see a plan that addresses how are we going to get better safety response in the sidewalks on Main Street. Just to say we're going to deal with it. We've said that, you've said that for 18 months, 2 years now.
Well, I haven't had the personnel to do it.
You have a way of planning it. You could have planned it for 2 years. What I'm saying is I'm just hearing stuff that basically is just happy talk.
It's not happy talk.
What's the plan? What's the plan? For pedestrians on Main Street, explain it.
Well, if you let me finish this, Sergeant Buckley had to do the presentation too, with some ideas.
Do you have a plan? For
There
Main
is a
Street?
plan, yes, there's always been a plan, okay? Okay, but it's just a matter of safety issues are basically more paramount. We're dealing with officer
But what
safety.
about a person on the street, in the sidewalk, in the crosswalk, on rush hour like you have up at the school? Someone like halfway down the street that could sit there and slow traffic down. There may be an officer in a car down at the bottom of the road to pick up people who aren't paying attention. I mean, it's a concerted.
I'm not saying it's not. I tend to agree with you, I'm not arguing with you. But there are safety factors that have to be considered. And it
I
deals
think
with
the number one safety factor is the public.
I understand that's paramount.
That's paramount.
That is paramount.
And what's going on here, though, is you hear about it all the time, and I see it and witness it. It's just atrocious.
And I agree. I'm not saying it isn't.
I know that.
I witnessed this, and I've stopped numerous people, okay, and issued warnings to them with regard to making the W Yellow Line U-turns, trying to pull directly in from going eastbound into westbound parking space.
Issuing tickets to them instead of warnings.
It again resolves and reverts back to the officer and manpower issues. I have 2 officers on the road at the time. We have crossings to tend to, we have falls to respond to. Last year, we had over 4,000 calls to respond to.
What is the difference in time that it takes to write, give someone a warning rather than give them a ticket?
It depends on what the violation is. It depends upon the time.
Crossing a yellow line.
Crossing a double line, you can sit there all day long, basically. I don't disagree with you. There are violations of crossing the double line. But then you have the garbage trucks there, you have people backing up. People are not courteous towards each other, they're not patient anymore.
There won't be until there's proactive.
And we are proactive. We've been proactive.
Can I ask you a slightly different question? Can we, the staffing update, where are we now with that? With the
We finally come to full compliance. The officer, the last order was hired, is going through the last 30 days of her training. And then again, we'll be moving forward with establishing that.
So once her probationary period's over, we'll be able to have that kind of dedicated.
And that's where I'm going with that. That is the plan, and that's when you'll see what we need to do at that given point in time. And again, the speed data devices that are on Main Street and all of that, we've done studies on Main Street. There isn't that much speeding during the early hours or work hours of Main Street.
That's not actually true. If you look at the data that we have, there's a peak in the morning and in the evening rush hour, and there's a minor peak at the time school gets out. And also that data is probably 18 months old because there's no data that's come from the sign that's on Main Street.
And I agree.
The only data that we have, I just want to correct something, and this is not at you, but just so everyone understands, we have a problem in the village with collecting data. The only data we're getting is from the little gray box that we had 2 years ago. And most of that data that we have is from 2 years ago, 18 months ago. We have a couple of locations that have been updated in the last couple of months. No data is coming off of the electronic signs.
So they're not working, or they don't?
I don't know. And so that's another whole issue we need to talk about, because in order to get really useful data for the chief and for the police department, we've got to get it on a regular basis. It's got to be more than once every, 3 or 4 months at a particular location. We have 3 devices, one of which will be fixed on Main Street because that's how we planned it. But there are multiple devices that can be moved around and collect data. Now, if we're finding the signs are not working in terms of the interface to them, then we should be getting another gray box and moving that around so we have multiple places to collect data. But that's an issue that I think is not on the chief per se, but it's on us to try to figure out how to make sure that there's enough resource to,
That's going to be one of my questions, would be another box, but I thought we had the 2.
We have 2, plus we approved one sign, an additional sign, right? Which we haven't, I don't think that has been ordered yet. So the concern is, maybe we're approaching it. Let's come back to the signs after you're done, because this is a whole other issue about that. It is a police resource per se.
I agree.
Do you want to do the Central Block presentation?
Yes, so moving forward now, I'd like to turn it over, but before I do it, there are some people that I need to thank also, because a lot of the signage that was done, a lot of these roadway markings have been done with the assistance of DPW, Superintendent Greg Nielsen and his staff, Steve Caparello, James DeCara. They've worked wholeheartedly, all out. It's a lot of work involved. This isn't something that can be done overnight, as we all know. And weather conditions are definitely an issue when you have to do the roadway markings. Again, obviously, we can't do them now during this time of year. They're done early in the spring, hopefully during the summer, but then we have vacation issues. And that kind of breaks down some of the getting this work done. And then we pick up again in the fall again. But they've been on top. They're working with me. I also want to thank Dave Parker from DOT, because he's helped me get these boxed out areas, and again, some of the other roadway markings that lead on Broadway. So, I mean, the job is not over. This is an ongoing process.
Well, I guess I was going to ask you, how often do you have to repaint a particular area because the white is fading? Is it yearly or 18 months?
Well, it depends. Usually the state does it every year.
Well, I'm thinking about like on our local.
On us, as often as 6 months.
Because I noticed the sidewalks, the crosswalks fade pretty quickly.
I mean, we've been lucky and fortunate we haven't had bad winters, because the soil was what eats up the paint like. And this colors the cross.
I mean, the markings are great, but I think as they fade, it fades from.
And again, that's man hours and takes time and weather conditions also. So there's a lot involved there. And on that note, with regard to painting crosswalks, I'm going to turn this over to Sergeant Potter for his quick presentation.
feel like I'm walking into a hornet's nest. Okay.
Friendly hornets.
I've been following what's going on, and Chief's been, updates me as to what's going on, and again, this is not my idea. I saw it in play, and I was skeptical. I kind of laughed at it, I thought it was comical, and then I realized, it works. So anyway, I call it cross-safe. It's stop, look, and wave. Very simple program, very cheap to implement, but highly effective. Okay, I believe it's a common sense proposal to address pedestrian and vehicle issues on Main Street through education and awareness. Okay, it's a low-cost program, it's a low-impact way to address the issues presented by both distracted drivers and distracted pedestrians. My concern is that it appears that it's always the driver getting blamed. Okay, I know I'm not telling anyone anything, but 50% of the problem is a distracted or non-attentive, unattentive pedestrian. Half the time it's them. Drivers are just as guilty, but the pedestrians are just as guilty too. It's a partnership. And when we blame one, we kind of lose the issue. So anyway, rather than place the blame and vilify one group, all parties have to acknowledge that they bear a portion of the responsibility concerning safety on Main Street. Conversely, it becomes responsibility of all parties to ensure that the highest level of safety for all the users of Main Street. If everyone is careful and responsible, accidents and injuries can be prevented. Okay, so let's take a look at Main Street. It's historic, it's picturesque, but it's never going to be fully upgraded to a modern 21st century street. That's never going to happen. The physical plant is not there. Furthermore, you as the government, you need to contemplate, expense, ability to fund, time to implement, potential loss of parking, okay, and the needs of the streets and the residents and the businesses. So let's get away from the expensive. Let's go with something cheap, okay? If you look at my map and follow, I had arts and crafts day. I obviously put a little too much time into that. So if you follow my map, and I'm sure you can figure out the markings, if you look at the length of Main Street, Broadway to Astor, 19 painted crosswalks, the unmarked Old Croton Aqueduct. In addition to being the village's central business district, Main Street's home to the police department, town hall, fire department, IVAC, the recreation department, a municipal parking lot, the elementary school. Also serves as a through street to the train station, the post office, 2 village parks, the commercial areas of North and South Astor Street, West Main Street, and 50 South Buckout Street. Add into this all the side streets and all the residences. Makes for a very, very busy street. Inadequate for 2017. Okay, enforcement. Enforcement, you guys have been going back and forth about that, has its own unique issues. That's not what I want to talk about today. Education, okay? Education's been addressed through your programs. Slow Down Irvington, the Walk Alert initiatives. Okay, highly publicized initiatives, extremely successful. Everyone's talking about it. About the need to be safe, slow down and be alert. Very important. Very successful. Okay. I think my plan, what I'm presenting here, is a third phase to that. Stop, look, and wait. Okay? Awareness. Well, this program addresses the awareness factor. The program is designed to raise awareness of how to behave safely in traffic. Think about that. I'm 52. I'm talking to people my age about behaving safely in traffic. Okay? We got to talk, you think about it, it's comical. We got to teach this to our kids. Okay? How to behave safely in traffic. It's a common sense awareness component combined with your existing educational efforts. It takes the whole thing to the next level. Okay? The program is extremely simple and quite effective. It's a hands-on approach to safety that's implemented literally at the point of impact. Okay? Here's how the program works.
Looking for impact.
What? That was a little play on words. Okay. Your first, give me 1 second. Okay, I'm back. Okay, stop. Pedestrians have to stop at the sidewalk. They have to stop at the curb or in the issue of the north side of Main Street, they're gonna have to venture out into the sidewalk, into the crosswalk, but just so far as so they can see out. People should know this, but they don't. Okay, you walk out in, in an area close to the sidewalk where they can look safely into oncoming traffic. Okay, entering any crosswalk on Main Street can be dangerous. I don't have to tell you this, especially for children and the elderly. Okay, angled parking, it's a disaster, but it is what it is. Okay, pedestrians like drivers, they're distracted. Often they assume that the oncoming traffic is going to stop them because why? Pedestrians have the right of way, so that means cars are going to stop. Unfortunately, it doesn't. Okay, drivers also they assume they make the assumption that they assume what the pedestrian is going to do. It's just a bad situation. When they make the wrong assumption, people get hurt. If you look at my second handout, that's the stop sign. That's the little thing. We have these all over the village. Unfortunately, if you go back to what we have at Main Street, you can't put them in the middle of the street. So they sit on the side, so people don't see them. This is a great sign. It alerts people to what's going on, but in a way, it's sending the wrong message. Because it's telling the pedestrians the cars are going to stop. And, that's a major problem. It's telling the pedestrians, I don't have to stop, I can walk. The cars are going to stop because pedestrians have the right of way. Well, that's all well and good until the car hits the pedestrian. Then it really doesn't matter that you have the right of way. Okay, so it's a good sign, it's very alert, but it gives off the wrong impression. Okay, the first part is stop, the second part is look. Okay, pedestrians, we still need to look both ways. You look left, you look right, you look left again. This is what we do. You need to look both ways, but with this program, you actually make eye contact with the oncoming car. Okay, that's the eye contact, it's the nonverbal way that announces that the pedestrian intends to cross. Okay, but you don't cross at that point. Oncoming drivers need to slow. They need to stop when eye contact is established. They need to physically stop their car. Okay, as they're slowing down, as the pedestrian's waiting, it keeps people from jutting out into traffic. That they're going to cross it and they're not going to cross. Everyone becomes on the same page. The last part is the wave. Once eye contact is established, once the vehicles are stopped, everyone waves to each other. Once you're waving, that's the acknowledgement, that's the cue for the pedestrian to cross. Tells the driver it's good, tells the pedestrian it's safe to cross. Okay? Implementation.
Can I say that?
Go ahead.
The wave part is really critical, because that's the way, even eye contact. I agree. People stare at you and still drive right.
Eye contact is good, but you gotta look, and, what you wave, it's the nonverbal way.
It's the acknowledgement, it's really critical.
Okay. How do you, implementation, how do you implement the program? I think you implement it the same way you've implemented the other program. Signs, the standalone signs are great. Okay, standalone signs, create them, they should be placed throughout the target area. Much the same signs out. For added effect, a banner at the top of the hill, a banner at the bottom of the hill. Highly effective, everyone sees them. Arts and crafts night. I need you a guide. Okay? I do, cross safe. I went, a copy this one. Went with the bottom, and I took the copy. If you look at my handout, I like this one the best. This is yours. You don't have to take a picture. Smile. I don't smile. There you go. Anyway, signs like this.
You gotta get your hold in there.
Put them all over the village. People will see them.
Yep.
Okay. The logo, the stop looking wave logo. Logo should be, this is important, logo should be painted on the edge of the sidewalk, in the crosswalk. Okay, contrasting colors always work best. Red on the white crosswalk. This reinforces the program, and in all honesty, it empowers the pedestrian. They know that they're in control, and they know they're not crossing until they get the wave.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
You showed a lot of different examples of markings.
I'm not there yet. Don't jump ahead of me. Okay, so if you go to my next handout, I have the stop, look, and wait, okay? This is a good guide, you can use the bigger one, whatever you want, okay. If you go to the last part of my presentation is various examples of how the program's been implemented in other jurisdictions, other municipalities. Me personally, I like the red on white. If you restripe the streets, paint it on there, and maybe even put it in yellow on the end of the sidewalk.
Crossing the grids, I like.
I like that the best. The red. But
If we had colored crosswalks like in the future, I sort of like,
I like that.
you know, that's really how.
I like that one too, but unfortunately, if you look in the middle, the white wears away on a very busy street,
Yeah.
you're gonna wear that away so
Well,
fast.
you know, we had, the streetscape plan had the notion of just potentially raised red or slightly raised, or maybe a different material like brick or something, whatever the recommendation was, I don't remember exactly, but it was a colored, high contrast.
Yeah, you stand, it's a colored stamped concrete.
Yeah,
You stamp-
I think that's it, yeah.
You dye the concrete, then you put the Belgian block stamp it. I mean, you know, even if it's raised a little bit, you know, it slows people down.
I even
Anyway.
like the idea of possibly going along the hashtag, starting with stop, and then next one be look, and then wait. This way you're going through each step as you cross them. I mean, there's a lot of things we can do with this kind of idea.
So, sorry, because I had an idea I'll throw in when you're done.
Okay, so anyway, like I said at the beginning, my son is a sophomore at State University of New York at Plattsburgh. We drove up with him and we dropped him off in September, and I went to Plattsburgh. I hadn't been back in a few years, and the Ruger Street, where the dorms are on one side and the main campus is on the other, very busy. It's a cut-through street, it's a double yellow line, no parking, but it's a busy street, and listen, college students are like kindergarten kids. They got their heads down, they got their earbuds in, and they're crossing and they're not looking. I gotta be honest with you, the program works, okay? I was very skeptical, I was almost halfway embarrassed to do it. Like, who waves? And then I realized, you're the only one not doing it. All the kids are doing it. So, you know, I was amazed, I was watching there, and everyone's waving and crossing, looking and making contact. It was amazing. So I know it works.
Hours is always.
I can't tell you enough. I was amazed at how it works. Anyway, seriously, as a kid, what did we all learn? I grew up in the city. What did we learn? Stop at the green, not in between. That's what we learned. Okay? You know, why not stop, look, and wave? Why not? Anyway, that's my proposal. You know, when you consider the safety issues on Main Street, I think the usefulness of this proposal becomes clear. Take a minute, look at my stuff, if you have any questions.
I like the softer side of Mike Buck.
I'd like to thank, you know, I'm gonna talk about that also. Thank the chief, hey, I thank you guys for, hearing me out, and that's what I got.
I have a question.
Oh, there's always one.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So, you know, Chief, you know how often I cross right here. I mean, you guys cross this for a meeting. I cross this because I live a block away. So, I have on my own figured out something very close to your program. So, first is my comment and then it's my question. You say wave. This is what I do. That to the car. What do you call that?
I'm not a fan of that.
Okay, all right, all right.
I'm not a fan of anyone walking into the street and sticking their hand up and telling anyone to stop.
Because this was.
I don't think it's your job.
You want the response.
I think it's fine.
Yeah, you want the
Okay.
flash.
It's gotta be friendly.
You want
Okay, all right.
Why-
More friendly.
It's
Okay.
gotta be friendly.
Okay, all right, that was the comment. Okay, now, here's my question.
Sorry, it's
What
Athens Boulevard.
Let me ask my question. What happens to the car coming the other way? So now you got the coming
Both
down
ways.
west. Do I wave at both?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, that's the idea, you wanna make eye contact with the oncoming cars. If there's two cars, you wanna make eye contact with both, and
you know, the trailer car is gonna stop when they see the other car stop.
What if no one stops?
What's that?
What if no one stops?
The idea is everyone makes eye contact and that's when they stop.
People
Again,
don't stop.
But what if they interpret the wave as meaning go ahead? Because they're
They don't.
from
They
you
don't.
and they have
No one does. This is-
This is not the program, that's for sure.
This is not complicated. Everyone gets a hold of it. Yes, there are distracted drivers, and some people don't stop.
A lot of people don't
A
stop.
lot of people don't stop.
What is the law? What is the law?
If you observe a pedestrian in the crosswalk, you are supposed to stop.
Right.
My point is, my point is, if you're in the crosswalk and there's a minivan parked here and a car is coming west on Main Street, they may not see you, and then that's where you run into problems. Then everyone gets irate.
But
That's where you run into the
haven't been at the
problems.
last two work sessions where we've had people come up and say, people don't stop for us on Main Street.
That's lack of courtesy.
You know what? Listen,
I've done an audit. And there have been 2 citations given by the Irvington Police Department for people refusing to yield to pedestrians at the crosswalk. 2. We get that as the biggest complaint that our committee gets, is that people don't stop for us being in the crosswalk.
I don't want to, listen, it's not my place to talk about enforcement. I'm just presenting a proposal that might work to help people from jutting out into the street, and it might make the drivers more attentive. That's all I'm trying to do. It's, you know, if you choose not to go with it, that's your choice.
I completely appreciate that. But I think what we're looking for at this point, because we're a year and a half into the our informational plan, we're already a year and a half into that, so we're kind of looking for complementary enforcement. And that's why I think we're all here tonight, is to hear the enforcement plan.
Well, before we get on, let me just close off. I think it's a great idea. I think we should go ahead. I'll commit to making a graphic for the sign like that. We'll figure out when to budget it and get it. As long as everyone else in traffic committee is okay with it. The other thing is, we have an upcoming PSA that we're gonna do again, video PSA for the high schoolers and junior high schools. I had been thinking about making use of this as part of it, but maybe we can give them an option and introduce them to, like, make a PSA either about stop, look, and wave, or making use of the armbands that for reflective armbands, so that gives them a couple of options to make some programming. And I don't know if you saw the result from last year. If you get a chance to get a look at it, the one that was the festival winner was quite remarkably done.
Like I said,
They do a good job for kids.
I think, for me, you know, for my end of it, I think awareness is the biggest. I just think awareness is the next step you should take. I'm not talking about enforcement or anything else. That's not my. People are distracted and inattentive. And as much as we want to blame the cars and the drivers, we need to look at the pedestrians also, and we need to all work together. Both ends of the spectrum are very distracted. Now, to address your issue, yeah, on Main Street at night, at dusk, when the lights are in effect, you do have a situation where you're not, you're not visible. If you're walking up the street and you have a business suit on, they may not see you. Again, is that a lighting issue? Yes. That's not my expertise. But I know exactly what you're saying.
We're talking about standing out at the corner at the crosswalk.
They don't stop.
Under a well-lit intersection, because it's well-lit at this intersection, and they do not stop. So my problem is that it's sort of are on their phone doing texting and stepping out.
That's everyone. But your point is, I understand your point, but that's everyone.
Quality of driver, and lots of times I like to assume that, because it always tends to happen the most at rush hour. And it's also the same driving stream that won't stop to let cars take a left or a right out of the side streets. It won't stop to let you pull out into out of a parking spot. Right. So there tends to be this mentality about the drivers at that time of day. I'm making a caricature, but it's like, I got to get home right away, and I'm assuming most of them are not on their phones. They're just determined to, make the next light at the top of Main Street.
You get it next to everything. You got the texting, you
You
got
get
on
a
the
mix of
phone,
everything.
and it's just a culmination.
Can I know we have enforcement issues, and I appreciate the fact that you're talking about a particular program. I could not also seen it work in college towns where it was astonishing that once people get this into their head, also having the right of way will get you literally nowhere
It
if
kills
the
them.
car does not yield to you.
That's right.
Yeah, so this is simply a way of engaging, but engaging in a positive, friendly way. And it is amazing, because the reason it works, that my experience was that people really looked for people. And then it was, and it's like, I can't believe this really is working, but it does. The other thing, just a little thing about pedestrians, while I understand the cars don't yield for pedestrians, driving up Main Street in the middle of the day, you're also dealing with the pedestrians who walk kitty corner through the middle of the street.
Jaywalking, yep.
Yeah, diagonally.
Exactly.
So take up,
That's another issue.
so it's not, it's so, lots of things are going on there, or people who are trying to back up to park. I'm sure you tell your kids, I told my kids, it's wonderful you have the right of way, you have to look both ways. You have to make sure the simple way of baking that in to make sure it happens. It's not the only thing we need to be doing. We absolutely need to have an enforcement plan, but I think this is a terrific initiative.
We start in the grade schools, we start wherever you go out to interact with the students.
You know what?
Bring this forward.
We've done it the past couple of years with
This
the
message.
No, not this message, but the officers going into the schools. And again, that's relative to when the school can allow us to come in with their schedule and all of that.
The other thing we can do, if somebody doesn't stop for the pedestrian, they can take license plate number.
Well,
Well,
that's when you have.
But most people won't even remember. Most people won't take the time to do it. They'll forget.
But if it's, that's.
They'll curse at the guy, or they'll do all kinds of other hand motions, if you know what I mean. And that'll be the end of it, So, we are trying to do whatever we can possibly
Paintball, my concept.
to be proactive from up in the front. We want the safe streets. I definitely want the safe streets. No question about it. But again, we're limited in some of the functions of
From the premise that nobody wants unsafe streets.
No,
That cars
absolutely
are not targeting pedestrians to run them over and leave them bleeding in the middle of the crossing. So how do we make it that cars absolutely comply with the law and that our pedestrians are safe? And I think this is a very good part of the program.
It's a very good program, and education is the key answer to a lot of this.
Yes.
I'm sorry, what did you?
I said education and then enforcement.
You go to a village like Great Barrington, and there's a 4-lane road.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? Questions for me?
No,
I'm leaving. Okay, you can keep my sign, keep in the packet. Now it's my time to ask you. I am the proud father of 2 Eagle Scouts. My younger son just attained his Eagle Scout rank on the 5th of January. Anyway, this is for you.
Thank you.
As is the custom, once everything is squared away and he's all approved, we have what's called the Court of Honor. And it's the one meeting dedicated to that scout where he is actually presented with his Eagle neckerchief, the rank, and all the accoutrements that go with it. Part of the process is whoever writes the Court of Honor, the father, can request letters of congratulation or proclamations or anything like that on behalf of politicians, people important to him, people important in the community. So that's my request letter. It would be presented to him.
When is this,
It's, right now, it's April 7th, it's gonna be April 7th.
Okay, we can do that.
I think we could.
That would really work well, and I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Mike, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your
All right.
time and effort.
Good night.
Well, I do think, on the enforcement piece, I had spoke, we did talk to Mike, Lieutenant Morano, and he was coming up with some specifics, so I think that part of the reason we don't have some of that tonight is because he was gonna use some examples. I mean, obviously you're not gonna give away like your tactics, but, he definitely had some specific things for certain speeding areas. So he had certain things for potentially on Main Street. A lot of it is just gonna be having that additional officer.
That's a big piece of it.
And then, I think, we talked about
kind of bang for the buck with that person as well.
Let me say this, that office is definitely gonna be on Main Street, and periodically, helping issuing summonses to Fairleigh the Yield, and also the jaywalking.
It's not the new
This is all part of the idea and the plan to do enforcement on Main Street with regard to failure to stop and jaywalking. So that's coming, but again, there's a lot here to be done. We just can't do it all at once, and with the manpower that we had prior to this, it was very difficult to do. There's a lot more going on to go.
But here's my problem, Chief, and it's,
Well,
I like the guy getting out on foot.
Yes,
And, you
that's
know,
coming.
and if it takes us getting another effectively school crossing guard out there to slow traffic down, maybe it's worth the money to put someone out there, at afternoon or morning, whatever, looking at the data, and put someone at one of the crosswalks further down the street to try to slow traffic down, remind people. But, I mean, because if I remember correctly, the cost of is not that high if you look at it. But anyways, we started the other issues that Main Street is supposedly a 15-mile-an-hour zone now, almost all the way down to wherever the heck, Black Cat, and yet none of the signage is up yet. I know, I'm just saying that.
Excuse me, sorry, that was, I raised a practical point.
Sure.
It actually ties in with what Mark is saying.
Why don't you come up here, Walter, so we can get you on the mic, that's better.
So, it's a practical question related to everything that's been discussed. And I, for one, like Sergeant Wood's idea very much. And I note that one of the things that we've obviously been focused on is pedestrian safety, and especially on Main Street. And our most recent meeting, we especially focused on the need for better signage and lighting for pedestrians. And I must say that any of our thoughts are not as creative as Sergeant Buck's. So maybe you should be on our committee, I don't know. But nevertheless, the emphasis was in that particular session on how do we make the crosswalk areas safer through better lighting and through better signage on the pavement and other means. However, the practical question really is, it's one of concern because in all of our proposals and recommendations, discussions to date with the board, we have urged, among other things, the signage that Mark was just talking about, and we've talked a lot about, we actually recommended some painting on pavement for drivers and for pedestrians. Again, not as creative as what Sergeant Buck was talking about, but we want brighter, more visible signage. The ideal thing would be to have better lighting too, but that's a whole other basket of cost considerations I understand. So the issue so far, and Larry and I have talked about this, is simply the pragmatic one of how do you get this stuff done in some reasonable period of time. And through no one's fault, we haven't had the manpower or person power to actually implement the kinds of things that we have recommended, like getting roadway pavement painted, or crosswalks in some areas where it's needed painted, so that things are more obvious. And if we can get Sergeant Buck's ideas materialized through painting or whatever else is required, that'd be fabulous. But my fear is that unless the board can come up with, and I've sat there so I know what the obstacles are, can come up with some way to get the person power necessary to get this work done, we're going to be having the same conversation 6 months from now or more. And that's been a major frustration for our committee because we have a lot, again, it's no one's fault, okay? And Larry and I have talked about this personnel issue a lot, maybe even ad nauseum. But we're not getting things done in some cases.
I agree.
Because we don't have the person power to do simple tasks that you would think you could find people aside from the enforcement officer. This is a whole other issue about physical labor that requires obviously some mental skill as well. to get the work done, but there are a lot of things that are backed up. We have recommendations in here that represent things that I think we all more or less agree to, but they don't get executed because the person power is not there. How many times have you said that to me? I just don't have the person power. We got a backlog. And so, to the extent the board can resolve that problem, we'd be very, very happy. And first prize, I think, or one of the first prizes would be to have Sergeant Buck's creative thing, you know,
Well, I mean,
realize.
what we can do, we can prioritize things and say, you know what, next Friday, there's no garbage pickup. Next Friday, we're gonna be painting lines. And, you know, people would be angry, but we can use our manpower for that.
But
you
we've
know?
already prioritized, and I mean,
Yeah.
because, let me just finish. In May, I think it was, or June, I don't know, last year, the board passed a 15-mile-an-hour zone for Main Street. It's changed except for the sign in front of the school went up. No signs went up or down. We also talked about past Black Cat, we were going to try to use yellow caution signs about the steep hill to try to keep the mileage down. Coming up the hill, there's still a sign across from the Main Street School that says school zone, and it gives an hours of when you're supposed to go 15 miles an hour, which is not what the law says. So we have a law on the books that is not being, in my mind, is when you pass a law, the priority should be to get the street signed properly. But I'm not looking at you.
No, I know.
I'm just, you know, I'm concerned because how do drivers know that it's 15 miles the entire length of Main Street? I mean,
Put
you
a
can
piece
put
of duct tape over that thing. I mean, you can put a piece of duct tape over it. It takes 5 minutes.
over what thing?
Over the hours.
Oh, well, I'm not even worried about that.
No,
That's
but I mean,
because that's a
seriously.
sign. It's all the way up at the top of Main.
I mean, first of all, I didn't mean this in an adversarial way.
But I actually do mean it that way.
That's what I was afraid of. But no, but seriously, and I don't want people who don't get their garbage picked up to start blaming you all.
But that's the job of our board has to say, okay, if we're not getting the priorities, we have to change the priorities around, because obviously something else is a bigger priority.
But Brian, what I was thinking, not to be presumptuous here, but I did sit there for a long time. So I was just wondering, and I always liked the zero increase in the budget, you know, every year that was our goal. But nevertheless, is there a way to hire some part-time help? Doesn't cost necessarily a lot. That's just one thought. So we supplement the labor that we already have in the department. Because I wasn't trying to deprive people of their regular garbage pickup or anything like that. You all have to make the decision, but that wasn't the assumption.
I think that if the DPW doesn't have the staff, we have to say, okay, well, you're not gonna do this without this, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Or, you know, we do hire a lot of summer help, so there is
Yeah,
a lot of extra help in the summer.
That was
In this season.
Yeah, so I mean, but anyway, we're gonna be, most of the line painting is in the spring and summer anyway.
And the reason I say all this is that, you know, the people on the committee have worked now for a year and a half. Some of these discussions go back 3 years. I was still on the board about enforcement and so forth. So it's a little bit of a frustration, actually a significant frustration, that we can't get some of these simple tasks done because there isn't the labor to do it. And I think it's probably relatively cheap labor. And again, I'm not blaming anybody for that, because I know how things go, but.
If I understand, there's only like 1 or 2 people that do most of the signage, so that's. you know,
Basically two, it's Steve Caprell and James DeCara.
Yeah.
Jimmy has an assistant from time to time.
But you mentioned, what we mentioned this summer, employees, maybe not just looking, summer is obviously the time to do most of this stuff, but to hire people dedicated to these tasks. Not just say, okay, when we have more summer people, then we can get it done. But specifically designate if we're going to have 2 summer people. It would seem to me this is a relatively time limited. It needs to be repainted, but you know that could be incorporated into regular schedule. But to get the signage, the painting, done, that we could have a target for getting it done this summer with dedicated staff.
If that's what the DPW says they need. I mean, again, I'm willing to say, no garbage next week. If we all say this is our priority, then garbage isn't nearly as important for a Friday. To have a full 16 people working on signage. I can't imagine it would take 16 people more than 8 hours to put up 4 signs up and down Main Street. I'm just guessing. I'm not an expert, not an engineer, but you know, I know we have to get the signs from Greenberg, but to say, okay, on 2 months from now, you can plan that Friday. Every single employee is going to be working on signage. or whatever.
Is that?
And I don't think you need all that, but.
But the other option is not to interfere, but actually, allocate a few $100s to pay for two guys to, part-time to go.
However, I think we just tell Greg, we need this done by May
Add a couple
15th.
people just dedicated to this.
Right, but on specific tasks, so
Yes, exactly.
right.
Well, I think we really still tell Greg, this has to be done by May 15th.
Yeah.
And whatever you need to do it, let us know.
Let us
If
know.
you have to, have garbage pickup for the entire month of May, put up 4 signs,
It
let us
sounds like
know.
this is one of those conversations that's been going in, going in a bowl, because it's echoing off all sides of it. Nobody's disagreeing about any of this, right?
But getting it done is.
It's getting it done, so
And we all, well, some of us blame, actually, I have to carry some of the blame for this because some of us were guilty of making cutbacks in DPW a few years ago to save a lot of money.
Okay, that was then,
But
in
in supplement, which is hard.
But it sounds like,
necessary.
it sounds like from what we're hearing tonight, that everybody's on this. So it sounds like we need to say, and we're putting a date on it. And what do we need to do to get it done?
Yeah, what do we, do you have the list of all the things that need, the signage and everything that needs to be put up in your recommendations?
The Main Street.
That's it. I mean, the 15-mile-an-hour signs, I know.
Concentrate on Main Street with the signage and the painting on Main
The
Street.
painting is
Also,
obviously
we
not
talked about doing signs, it takes time to order because they have to come through.
So-
We also talked about signage on, safety signage on Station Road, even though we realized we couldn't adjust the speed limit downward because it's of the distance the school is from Station Road. We still talked about, we could probably put up some of those orange safety, narrow road, windy road, and
We've done that on East Sunnyside Lane, because there was none of those curvy signs indicating that the road is curved.
At the end of it.
Use caution on that. And that drops the speed limit down to
Yeah.
15 miles an hour.
Right, that's what we talked about. So here's those two corridors, at least, Station Road and Main Street, we had very specific, very specific goals to get those speeds down, rather than saying across the entire village.
So we need the 15-mile-an-hour signs for Main Street, and we need some curvy signs, whatever the warning slow, whatever the signs we decided for Station Road. Why don't we give them a May 1st deadline for the DPW to follow?
I don't know who wants to chime in on what, I guess the police chief should decide what sort of signs there should be.
Well, the signs, I think, getting them ordered, and when Greenberg can get them done for us.
So
That's
maybe
the
the
other
deadline isn't, if we
I
don't.
mean, they have to check with Greenberg and how long it's gonna take.
Okay, so can we, let's start that.
May 1st, we want them installed, the appropriate
Could
signage.
be adjustable if you find out you're not getting the signs together, but let's have that.
Let you know how much it would cost.
And you'll be working with Greenberg.
May 1st.
No, Greg will
Greg will do
handle
it.
it, this DPW.
I think it might not be a bad idea if we go back, take our inventory out and double check it. Much of it's here, but it's not as specific as another inventory that we have somewhere else, if you don't mind. Because we actually got some fairly specific recommendations.
Can you get that to us by the March 7th meeting?
Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah.
Or,
That's tomorrow?
yeah, whenever you can get it to us. And then we'll pass that along. I still
But,
think we try to keep the
I
May
think,
1st date.
there's 25 recommendations, they all make sense, they all need to get done, but let's pick out, the doable ones that, we can
Well,
do.
that's-
That's good.
Well, let's start
There's
with.
one caveat, and that is, you may want
With that,
some special expertise.
Yes.
You just need the details of what you want.
And also, you're not gonna get.
Well,
it
Sergeant
painted right
Buck has
now.
given us the details.
You're gonna get painted when it's better weather.
So we
Yeah,
get,
You can change it by an outside contractors.
Yeah.
You just need to get the details.
So,
we get the details, we set a date, and, how it happens
Yeah,
is
figure how much it
between
costs.
Larry working it out. If there's some expense,
That's a
We'll
game
do
changer.
it.
If we can do that, that is a game changer.
yeah.
So I have
It eliminates a lot of frustration.
I have a second one that, in terms of getting us out of a bottleneck in terms of personnel and resources, are the signs themselves. The two radar signs we should be collecting data from them. I don't think we are yet, but we talked with the traffic logic people, and one thing they point out is that there's an ability to get these things connected to the cloud effectively. If we put cellular modems in, they can upload their data automatically to a secure server where you can have multiple accounts with different levels of authorization. So people from Larry, from you, from the traffic committee can get in there. You can look at the data, you can generate automatic reports and everything else. So at that point, you no longer have to, maintain the signs or go and milk the data out of them. The data is always up to date. The only issue then is, for support of the signs, is that the signs with batteries have to get the batteries changed periodically. And I know the one on Harriman has a problem that every couple of weeks the batteries go dead for a week. So by just looking at that sign, the attention to keeping them up and functioning isn't there right now.
No, you need to develop a maintenance program for them.
And this would actually allow you to see when the batteries are getting low remotely.
The higher you go with what you're talking about, which is a great idea, the more expensive the sign.
Well, I wanted to say, to retrofit, this is the number. To retrofit the signs that we have, it's about $400 a sign to get a cellular modem in there. And then the cost per year per sign is $370 to have a cloud service.
Okay.
Which sounds to me like
That's another valuable tool in the toolbox.
Actually.
Plus the cell service. Plus the cell service.
Sales service? No. No, that's not what.
I'm not sure we're gonna get these very specific things done
I think
tonight.
we're all supportive of it. Can we
We're
have
all
a
supportive
proposal, a solid proposal by the March 6th meeting?
Well, we have to get one from Traffic Logics, I suppose. They were supposed to send us one. We haven't seen anything from them yet.
You sent something this afternoon.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
So could we have the full proposal by March 6th? With the costs and the retro, that seems like it's about $400 a year and $400 up front, so.
Something like that, yes,
Yeah.
but that, we have to see if the cellular, I understood that it was all in, the cost was all in, but okay.
But we can have a motion, a actual item to approve it on the 6th.
Yes.
If you think we get the details by then, if we can't.
But let's get as much
The specifics on what we want from
that
something.
we,
But that could be an ongoing thing too. We can get you like an initial
Yes.
list of things and
Yes.
we'll just keep adding.
let's get the first
to
three
it.
things done and then move on to the next
Yeah,
three things.
Yeah, that's pretty easy. I don't want to overlook the work that Alice has done either to get armbands, and I don't know who else was involved. I don't want to overlook anybody, but with regard to pedestrian safety, we thought that kind of thing was important.
Is that where you want to be taken if they get very far?
No, this is where they don't want you to come since you're wearing this. It
Actually, it's
actually,
kind of morbid. At least it's not a funeral call.
the story behind it is that,
You want to say anything else about the?
Sure, it was actually Paul Feiner that did most of the work. He's the one that approached the hospital and they took him up on the idea and they donated 2,000 and said they will continue when those are gone to give more. So they go through Greenberg, we got 600 or so. 750, and
Mark is 300.
right now they're
they're all upstairs.
But we'd love it if the police could take.
We have a box, we have our own box.
Great.
Right, you have half of the R7, you have like 360 something.
And
So, sorry,
what do you expect to do with them?
Well, people come in already and ask for more, we distribute them, I think if we could push out some kind of announcement on the website that we have them available, anybody wants to stop in, we'll give them out.
And we have them available through the upstairs as well.
How about the rec department?
The rec department would be another good place to have you.
And when we celebrate our Region Day, that's a great time.
We're going to go through them very quickly, and the next one I would advise is, I'm not sure if this is the best format, a lot of people complain about it, but
Where do you wear it?
Is that an arm?
it's supposed to be on your arm over a coat, so that's why it's so big.
Oh.
But I think if we actually got some and not go back to Phelps, we would probably do our own walk safe or something, Irvington.
Alice Irvington running meetup is very appreciative.
Oh, good.
I
Oh,
did
yeah.
one of the first ones last night.
So if you do get.
And,
Well, if you get feedback in terms of like he was saying, what's
They were a little hard to put on.
They're hard to put on, right, so if we ever do make.
But we did take a picture of us wearing them and we will upload it to the Facebook page with information on how to.
Very stylish.
It
takes two
Came about
people to
4
put
of
it on.
us.
That's very hard.
Great.
Well, let's
Alice said she did contact Joe.
And there's gonna be something in the enterprise about this week, according to Tim Lamar.
About this?
Yes. So we can get the
Going to the keeper's house.
patrol guys to hand them out too, you know, without being too scare people. You know, like, hey, come over here, I got something nice for you.
Well, the spring is getting posted too, so we'll be doing a road check.
Right,
soon.
time for parking discussion, right?
We must have.
Can our committee actually ask a question also?
Sure, hang on. From the train.
Sorry, Brian.
I thought we were gonna get a data collection plan also.
I do expect a data collection plan. It only had the, where they're going back to on it, so I asked for 10, I think 3 future locations. I asked if they could expand it by month as opposed to just the order, like when they actually thought the timing would happen.
Yeah.
And they were saying that the winter was, the part of the problem was that in the winter, they wanted to bring it out, say, next week, and they're, or this is where we want to put it next without times, and I asked for dates, so the report that I got, I didn't think it was ready for prime time.
And what about our signs, our radar signs and the data collection from the radar signs? They've been up in place since March, and we don't have any data from them yet?
That's what I was asking for by the March 6th meeting. We got to make sure, we got to find out why they're not working and figure that out. That was part of the, putting it into the cloud for the cellular as well.
Because I'm very concerned about the discussion about Main Street and pedestrian safety, and having this be our solution to a problem that we've had for a really long time.
One piece of
Yeah.
the solution.
That we've been dealing with for a really long time. But to me, it's obviously the speed of traffic on Main Street. We have to know what the speed of traffic is, and then we have to be able to slow down traffic. Because if a car is going 25 or 30 miles an hour on Main Street, they can't stop even if they want to make eye contact with someone. I guess they're not going to wave at you if they're driving. They might look at you and they're not going to be able to stop because they're going too fast. We've had for a really long time. We've known about it for a really long
And what
time.
we're trying to do is an interconnected way of approaching it so that you're absolutely right, and the frustration is very understandable. I think we have a plan. Let's get them.
I'm worried that we don't know what the problem is. And to me, it's like I look at the speed reports and you can see the spikes in speed are at certain times of the day. That all translates to Main Street also. It goes from Sayersfield Road to Harriman Road to Sycamore Lane, any place that people are coming to the train, and it comes to Main Street too. Those people are not going to make eye contact and stop for people. They're going to hit people.
That was also, as the chief said, of the new officer that's going to be signed for, I guess he's going to be 8 hours to 12 hours. Probably 6 of it is going to be on Main Street. And then the other 2 hours is going to be the, Sayersfield, that 1 o'clock is the IP time or whatever.
The data that's received is gonna be the driving force on.
Right, which is why we have to get this machine, we got to get the data collection working, which is the March 6th date.
I mean, these areas are known, but like I say, the data that we receive makes it easier as to pinpoint timing and everything else. And then again, that's gonna be the asset to revisit these areas, these other areas that have already been tested, to retest them again, and keep it on the cycle.
Is there going to be a plan put forth, an enforcement plan? Because I didn't hear a plan really tonight.
What plan are you looking for?
How are you going to get the data collected? How are you going to request the data? Is it going to be online? Is it going to be for everyone to see?
I don't have control of how the data is collected. I don't have control over the sign. When we get the information, the data is communicated to me, then the cellular service
would be,
yes,
would get it out of everyone's head because it's available to whoever's authorized to access it.
When it comes available to me, yeah, obviously, yeah.
There's 2 issues. 1, we have to make sure that it's working, because I think the fixed ones are not working. 2, then we'll figure out who we're going to obviously, our board will share it with the traffic committee, and obviously the first place is going to be shared with the police department so they can come up with their plan. And then, they might tell us post facto when they do it, so we don't all know that 1 o'clock they're going to be on Sayersfield Road every Thursday. But that's the kind of thing we'll be able to look back and they'll say, this was what we saw for the data, kind of what you did on Sayersfield Road now. This was the data, this is what we did. We went back 3 months later, it was still bad, so we're sending more, more manpower or whatever. That's without having the data collection working.
But we have the data for Sayersfield Road. Now, I looked at the numbers were crazy. 91% of the people drive 5 miles per hour of the speed limit or more. We went there, we gave tickets. We actually reacted to the data. The first time I've seen that in the 3 years of the auditing I did. Maybe the first time ever in the history of Irvington, I have no idea. But then, that doesn't solve our problem. What is the enforcement for Sayersfield Road from today going forward? Like if you give out 17 tickets, 10 tickets in January, 7 tickets in February, are you going to continue to give out tickets? And then
Absolutely.
when?
Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we?
Because you never did it before. This is the first time. No, I'm asking then, when do you measure the data again? What is the process? I would like to know the plan.
But I think that the next process is we're gonna go back out and measure it again and see if it's changed behavior. If it hasn't, we just gotta continue.
Continuing process. It's
Can I
never
just
stopped.
say, I think that the frustration is that in most professional environments, we expect to see a timetable with a plan with very specific objectives and goals and how we're going to meet them. And that doesn't mean that we necessarily will, but that if we don't, if we see that we're going to miss a date, then we give everyone a heads up, we explain why not, and we propose a secondary date. We expect to see things.
Well, I think we did that. We started that tonight with saying we gotta get this stuff working by the 6th. We can't put out the.
No, and that was fantastic, but this enforcement issue doesn't
Yes,
ever
but-
seem to get that level of detail. We never have a concrete expectation. It's like, we repeatedly talk about it in the most ephemeral way, and we never are given a concrete expectation.
Well, precisely.
of when
So let's,
it
but
will.
perhaps more ephemeral discussion is not going to be what's going to move this ball forward. We've spent a lot of time on this already tonight. We have a plan. We have the beginnings of a plan. Nobody is
We have a
saying
plan
this
for
isn't
signage.
important.
I don't mean to be rude at all. I just want to say we have a plan for signage and education
And
now.
enforcement will.
But enforcement is always kind of.
But I think enforcement's more difficult because if we had 300 officers, we could say we're gonna assign 60 to this year. The problem is we have one extra person we're gonna start using that we don't even have yet full time. We brought him in overtime, we've done some enforcement, okay? What happens is we have that person, even that person 8 hours now dedicated, which we can have in 30 days. He comes in, he's ready to go, someone bangs out sick. We don't have that person today. It's very hard to say, Tuesday, 3 o'clock, Sarsfield Road every Tuesday. It's not as easy because we're juggling things often.
Correct.
So maybe our goals should be very, very modest, but we still are looking for concrete goals.
So we are as well, which is like the Sarsfield thing. We now want to go back and measure it again, and if it's not, we're going to have to continue enforcement. Like it's going to be that way. It's not going to be.
We have the manpower to have 10 officers on Broadway 4 times a year or whatever it is to do these massive roadblocks.
Right.
But we don't prioritize traffic safety. We don't prioritize managing the speed of the
New
road.
York State pays for that. They pay all that overtime, New York State pays for it. So that's the difference between those big traffic stops. That's why it's a good thing to do because people know coming through here, you can't be overweight trucks and that kind of thing. People in because there's also a state police trailer there. There's all these things. So New York State will give us, $15,000 to do that. They'll give us another 15 to do DWI enforcement. That's why we can bring in extra people for overtime. We have brought in people, occasionally for overtime to do it. It's really, again, it's a manpower thing, and you can line up these schedules with the 12-hour timeframes, and then I think it's like every 3 weeks we have one extra person during the day. If someone isn't hurt or sick or whatever.
Or on vacation.
Or on vacation. So, like in the summer, when people go on vacation, we typically don't have the extra one person. That's why we're dealing with such thin margins here. I think that's the thing we forget, is we have literally the minimum number of officers that we can have by law to have a functioning police department most of the time. So we've had it where someone calls in sick, we call in the next person, and they're away or whatever, so we barely function sometimes. So it's not like we have all this extra manpower that we can dedicate to something. We finally have that one, and that's why one extra person, it doesn't sound like a lot, one extra officer, 8 hours a day, is gonna make a big difference. That 85% of the time, someone's not gonna be sick or out or on vacation, so we can dedicate that person. And that's where we can start to have more of a plan that if if everything goes right, we can do that. And that's what we're starting to develop now.
So it would just be, I appreciate your explaining it, it really is very
Because I've
helpful.
had the same conversations, why can't we do this? And then,
Well, how many officers are there on patrol at a time? Two. Okay, we've been working on this for a year and a half, Connie, and I've never been explained it. This has never been explained to me. And we keep doing the same thing over and over. We have the same discussion every single work
So
session.
that's what we said we want to stop doing. And we now have a plan. So March 6th, there is going to be a specific list of things that, timeline to be accomplished. It all fits together. The data, the reporting, the police power, the decisions where people are being deployed, the painting
So in
of signs,
terms
the
of
education.
enforcement, is there anything we can or a timeline for when we can expect to see something that is measurably different?
Don't,
Brian
the mayor
explained,
just
I
explain
think.
that.
In 30 days,
That there's no possible timeline?
there's
I
like,
appreciate what you're saying, I don't want to
we can
diminish
give
it.
you
I appreciate it.
a focus sheet, these are gonna be the areas we're gonna be focusing on. But we can't say that, for 3 hours on Tuesdays, we're gonna be on Sunnyside. And it's, because it's not gonna be that easy, because then let's say that we say that, 3 hours on Tuesday is gonna be Sunnyside. Well, then you know what? There are 4 calls that you have
No,
to
I
get.
understand
So,
that
like,
it's not.
we can give you a guide that will say, this is what we're gonna be doing. If we get data that this place is bad, we're gonna put someone there twice a week, but we're still gonna bring them back to Main Street for a minimum of 3 hours, something like that. We can do something like that. It's not gonna be a date and a time.
No, that's fine. I don't think that,
I will
or we
personally-
want it over-specified or beyond what would be useful.
Yeah.
2 years in the making,
Some things take time, and I know nothing happens as fast as we
it's
would
not,
like it.
it's not the timing so much as the lack of specific plan
Well,
that has
that's
been
where-
communicated to the people who are working
Well,
at the other end of
I've
it.
been on here, I've heard lots of explanations of why things work. The lack of manpower held everything up for quite some time. That has now been solved, and now we need to take the next step. So you've heard loud and clear from everybody here tonight, that's exactly what we intend to do.
The trust.
Oh, no, I would never, ever assume anything of the kind, but if we have a plan, and the
That's not
next.
fair, because I do trust and appreciate what you're doing.
That's completely irrelevant. The point is, we now have a plan and a date, and I don't think there's much more we can accomplish tonight.
That's what I
Right,
meant.
and I do think that we're gonna have more specifics as, we get closer to that 30 days, because Lieutenant Morano already talked about how you're gonna deploy them. A lot of it's based on the data collection.
Again, it's
But that's why, to me, the key is getting that data collection. And Larry understands that. So I think that especially the 2 fixed ones, those are the ones we can check literally every week and say, what Hammer Road's up, we get a little
But
bit.
these areas are known to us, and it's not just pinpointing the timeframes, getting it down, what the violations are going to be, what to expect. Having to just go out there and sit and wait is a waste of manpower hours, and we have more other things important to do in the village, along with this too.
So if we have Walter as our omnibusman, who has,
Czar was easier.
the czar, to be in touch with Larry as needed to communicate from your committee, so that shouldn't end. So you should feel there's a communication. Well, that's,
Thank you for the
Ken.
time and for the.
Yeah, we'll have some more slides.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next Friday, right?
Parking, your favorite parking?
Can I make a suggestion? This is entirely up to the group. We have another agenda item, and we're having a session with the council. If this is not going to be a very brief report, or can we agree that you'll make the report and we will hold off on lengthy discussion of it perhaps?
Larry has a fairly brief report. I think it's important to start with this is an introduction.
Yeah, and I know.
With suggestions.
Good
night, thank you.
That we all agree that we're going to keep
Hey,
it to
Chief?
Larry's.
Chief, Andy said, question, just read for a second if we can.
Sure.
Zephy.
So,
We have a nice map.
You don't see a read. See what's dispute about.
this is also your only time.
Did you?
Not so much the person that was opponent probably driving the tires and stippling. They had a discussion. And that's where it's driven.
Yeah.
We can't enforce it. But again, bring to what
Okay, so, just, I'll give you a quick overview of what the issues are, some of the information we've collected, and then,
No, thank you.
and then go from there. Yeah, probably move on to something else. So, in looking at the parking scheme in the downtown area,
there were a number of problems that we noticed. Things like the overnight parking restrictions were inconsistently applied throughout the downtown. Some rules somewhere, some rules. There were 6-hour limits on parking on the side streets that were established long ago, and there's reason to believe that because of the residential parking permit system that we currently have, we don't use those 6-hour limits any longer in many places.
That's a great concept.
Also, uneven demand for parking up and down Main Street, I think that's maybe obvious. You know, it's much more concentrated in the central section. And yet, the parking that's available doesn't match up with the parking that is being demanded, where the demand is. So, first main thing we did was look at the fixed amount of parking that we know we need to provide for, and that would be the residents of the area and the employees that come to the area during the day. We looked at trying to match up all of that demand on and meet that demand only on the side streets without requiring residents or employees to park on Main Street. That's obviously not our desire. So, at parking inventory, the amount of spaces that are available just on the side streets. And I know I gave you a detailed spreadsheet there, which I won't go through, but I'll summarize it by saying that there are a total of 440 spaces available on just the side streets alone. It's based upon data that we collected, the number of residential parking permits that we've issued, and also a pretty detailed survey that we did of businesses along Main Street. We've come to the conclusion that there's a demand of about, 411 spaces. It's obviously, we round those numbers. So it's fairly equal, a little less on the demand than there is for parking. But the demand is not lined up with where the parking is. So for example, and again, looking at that spreadsheet will show you that, for example, on the lower area of Main Street, you have 147 spaces available, and just relatively arbitrarily divided up Main Street into 3 areas, as shown on the map that I handed out. I did a little artwork myself.
Big art day.
Wasn't really Sergeant Crawford. And so, for example, on the lower area, there's 147 spaces available on the side streets alone, with a demand in that area from employees and residents for 100 spaces. So, in excess of the parking. Contrast that with the central section, where you have an inventory of 173 and a demand of 185, so it's an overlapping. So, so then we looked at, okay, so the residents need to, at least conceptually, the residents should be able to park with their residential parking permit on the street that they live on. That's fairly obvious statement.
Seems like a good thing.
Right. So it's the employees that we could potentially control by implementing, by adapting our residential parking permit system for use by the employees. And
that's okay to do.
Which is marginally okay, but we're gonna go with it.
We draw the
Like living on the edge.
Yeah, we're gonna. It's you can creatively interpret it that way. Well, I could anyway.
That's I'm going to take some business law.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's
All
right.
on it.
That's right. But anyway, the notion is that those permits could be issued and zones, depending on how they're divided. I've done it arbitrarily here, but it could be done differently. And employees would be given, there would be limits to the number of permits given to employees in any particular zone. So the employees may not have the ability to park right outside their business, which is okay, and we heard feedback that was okay, but there could be parking at least in the not too much of a distance from where they work.
outside of their own zone.
Could be,
Yeah.
yeah, if
Right.
limits are reached.
You got one in Lower, but there's none in Middle, so.
How accurate are the employee numbers?
We got about
Did we survey
Oh, yeah.
and get good responses?
We got about a 50% response, which is pretty high. And then we did estimates on the other 50, so we identified basically every business on Main Street. And we, got responses for about 50% of them, and then we did estimates for the other 50.
And Hillary won, by the way.
I had 3 million spaces.
So that's the overall kind of the numbers game, and I'll limit it to this. The goal here would be to eliminate the overnight parking restriction, would be to standardize the parking hours across most of Main Street and side streets to 2 hours, on the basis that parking permit can park in excess of those 2 hours. So those people, the residents and the employees, aren't affected by that. We can also expand the hours on which those residential parking permits are available, so that we can reduce employee and resident conflict, which is happening in central areas, especially restaurants and whatnot. And we would still reserve an area of Lower Main Street for 6-hour parking, which you talked about, which is not shown in what I.
Right, that was my concern.
I missed that, and I said that to Janice today.
So is the idea like where it is now, sort of?
A couple of streets to the, everything's 6 hour. On the side streets?
No, I was thinking.
Everything's 6 hour.
Okay, but then you'd carve out a section?
We'd carve out some streets, probably the lower streets.
And you wouldn't need a permit for that?
No, 6-hour parking. Right, without.
Because we all recognize that there are people who go into the city.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time, doctor's appointments, interviews, matinees.
Sometimes without much notice.
Right, and also people have babysitters come so they can do their Christmas shopping, you don't want the babysitter having to go out and move the car with the kids in it. So, yeah, we need to have.
That was my only concern about this whole plan.
But we had talked about it, it just kind of slipped through but the overall, this was so, took account of all of the needs of residents, of employees, of business owners, people coming here to shop.
My problem is it's too simple. You could actually understand it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is what the problem.
Yeah.
What's that a really difficult twist when we found it last?
I'm sorry, I'm only being semi-sarcastic because it's important that it's uniform and understandable.
Right, you have to, if you look
Clearly,
at the
a
rule.
tremendous amount of
Yeah.
thought and effort and creative thinking went into figuring out this simple solution. This was not.
And these numbers are like really
but this
nice
was
to
not,
have.
this was not like abundantly obvious just looking at it. This was a really creative.
But it should, I mean, it's the third rail of local politics, parking.
Yeah, and like we were talking before the meeting a little bit, it's one of those things where if we eventually get to a plan that we can adopt here, if there's things that need to be tweaked, they can tweak.
That's my take on parking is you're never gonna get it right for everybody. So you tweak it as you go, but I think this is an unbelievable first take after many years of hard work by Connie, Larry, others.
Larry, just to get clear, that you can only get a permit for your district, for your subzone?
If you're a resident.
Yes.
The theory is if you're a resident, yes, you'd have a.
And so you have to prove it somehow by your blood type and your.
Yeah, no, you do that anyway. The employee thing is a little bit trickier, and I won't go into that tonight because I don't have any solid answers on that. But I think that they're.
Would you still zone the employees as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, you zone them out of the middle area.
You zone out of the middle. Push them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Okay, I'm just
You have
trying
to
to
walk
understand
a little bit
better.
to your job, a couple of blocks, and you're
It's
there
better for your
for
business anyway.
8 hours, and then you
Right,
walk
I'm
back.
sure the owners are fine with that.
Well,
We talked to
Yeah.
some.
I think
Rather
they'd be
have
happy.
customers being able to park.
The idea is
Yeah.
customers need to be by the commercial ventures.
And
but
the
they're-
net result of this, well, first of all, none of the residential parking permits give you the right to park on Main Street in excess of the time limits. It's only the side streets.
Right.
The legislature was very clear about not having those permits be effective in front of commercial establishments. That's the way they wrote it. And so that's fine. This plan only looks at, or only contemplates the side streets as being the places where those people can park, residents and employees. The visitors and, patrons are expected and would be expected to park on Main Street.
Now, what, did you say, because I was typing a letter to Traffic Logics, I apologize. Did you say what happens, is there any condition where one of the zones doesn't have capacity for residents?
No.
Based on the numbers you collected?
No, the way that's, in fact, the spreadsheet sort of refers to it at the bottom there, which is where I list out.
Available parking, you mean?
The very bottom, I think it says there would actually be the limits on the number of permits we would issue. The resident number actually has no limit, but we base we estimate how many we would issue based on what we're issuing now. Then below that would be the employee number, and that number would be limited and spread out differently to match up with what the available parking is.
So what's the demand percent of inventory?
Not a very accurate number, actually.
Well, what is that supposed to represent? How busy you think it's, how many people want it?
Yeah, but it includes Main Street numbers, and that shouldn't have included Main Street numbers.
Okay.
So probably shouldn't have been there.
Never mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I would like to see, I mean, if we're really still very tight, or if this is solving some of the other issues.
Well, it's going to be tight because you have a demand of, low 400s and you have an inventory of 450. So that's by definition it's tight. Now there are patterns that develop with how people use spaces at what time of the day, and so it's not necessarily tight all the time. But there's going to be overlap periods where it will be tight, the evening times when people come back from work, but yet the restaurants are still open, and so there are certain overlaps. But you would have the ability to do something that you don't have right now, which is to distribute the people that you can use as pawns, and I don't mean that in a bad way. But you use the employees as that X factor of distributing.
Employees are always pawns. Well,
unfortunately. And when will we discuss?
Yeah, it'll just be another work session. I just have to
Okay.
look at the.
I would think, once we want to put it out with more detail, then we want public comment.
Of course, yeah. This is the first time most of you have heard this.
Do we lose anything by giving up no overnight parking? I mean, why was that in the law in the first place?
Well, we never really established the reason why it was in the law. We don't know. We've asked other communities. They all enacted them around the same time, so I don't know what.
Kind of fear maybe of people parking from
RVs
out of town, and you couldn't figure out who it was, and it was some ne'er-do-well person, or it was just there was no real reason that was supported by any evidence.
And originally, the law is no overnight parking, but actually the law is not overnight parking. It's not no overnight parking. It's between the hours of 3 a.m. and 6 a.m.
Right, so
effectively, yeah. But what it means is that, we heard lots of arguments about safety but that's 22 hours of the day you can park there.
I always feel like if it's a safety issue, you should never be able to park there. It's,
right.
If you can't fit a fire truck down at night, you can't fit it down there.
It was a hodgepodge of one thing on top of another, on top of another, different eras.
There are issues with snow removal and things like that, but I think we can have different ways to address that.
Other thing, which I think is an enforcement thing, but there was a lot of we always get, and you can see, there are on the side streets commercial vehicles being parked during the day and overnight that are not there working on someone's property, but are there as, this is where I'm parking the truck for my business.
Yeah.
So that seems to be an enforcement issue, right? I mean.
Well, there's nothing use that for.
I don't know. No, I'm just saying, parking, wouldn't it be, or, because you're not permitting commercial vehicles, are you, in this
No,
plan?
First of all, the parking of a commercial vehicle on a street is something that is nothing that we can prevent, or
You can have a law.
You can have a law. Okay, so we don't. I don't think.
But there was certainly.
We can prevent it in our parking lots.
You mean overnight, are you talking about overnight?
Well, specifically commercial vehicles. You're talking about overnight, or?
Well, most of the complaints about overnight, I
Yeah.
think, storing them overnight and taking up.
You could say no commercial, yeah, you could pass a law that says that, or, commercial vehicles have to be inside a garage or something like that.
Live wires, and they're fairly cognizant of this, it's a
I mean, just again, to clear it up from, because some people are just trying to save parking money, I think, by keeping they're,
But a lot of them are, well, at least a handful you could name that are commercial businesses that are
Do we have a
Main
special,
Street
do we have,
businesses
could we have a
that-
different, permit for, local? Yeah,
So maybe we need to find out how big a problem it is beyond our local library.
I think it's pretty much, it's our local.
no, I think it's more than the light.
Out there,
Okay,
as
all
a
right.
landscape.
You gotta look at the plumbing, the electrical people, and some landscaping, probably.
Yeah, but it's
Well,
parking
I'll
inside
put
the
on the
house.
list
Yeah.
to be.
I wouldn't want to, I wouldn't want to handicap.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see blow this down.
They really do,
because-
they do have a larger vehicle, and if it's taking more space.
Well, that's different, we're not talking about handicap, because they wouldn't have commercial plates.
No,
No,
handicapping.
I don't mean, no, I said our local businesses, I wouldn't want to handicap the
I
business.
think this is a,
Yeah.
I think it's a great plan.
I don't really want to call it a start because it's really like,
Well, no,
like
it's
75 years. Yeah, it's a great place for us to jump into the process, fully jump into it, as opposed to being involved in the fringe. And it's been an unbelievable amount of work, so we appreciate everything everyone's done and the end zone and now getting started like that and getting all the glory.
Okay, let's not lose track. Thank you, by the way, this is really critical, this is one of. But I have one other thing I wanted to throw out that we should talk about the next time around. You know, the streetscape plan had the notion of bulb outs or even painting. And, if not, not physical, but paintballs. And the notion was, at the corners, the notion was for pedestrian safety, visibility at the corners. We had the discussion tonight about that's the number one of the visibility issues. So, and I think the number was like 17 spots or something like that.
Listen, I don't know how it's all gonna work out in the end, but I would argue that if you can correctly accommodate all of those two groups on the side
Yeah.
streets, then the only people that need parking on Main Street are the visitors, and I think that you will see an increased amount of spaces available on Main Street, which would allow you to take out spaces with.
Right, that's our hope.
But I
Make
do,
those
but
safety issues.
as much as the microphones are on, I wouldn't want to necessarily go on record saying that, but that's a potential. That's absolutely a side benefit that I'd like to see.
Well,
If that happens,
The
then
words will be in.
amazing.
I will make a motion to adjourn if I get a second.
Second.